Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing excites me more than the thought of President Trump initiating the largest deportation operation in American history. I'd like to remind the committee that the purpose of our immigration system is for the benefit of American citizens, not foreigners or anybody else. For the past 4 years, Democrats have facilitated the invasion of over 10 million illegal aliens into our country. Open borders grow the welfare state, they depress American wages, strain our education and healthcare system, price our working class out of owning a home, and flood our communities with violence and drugs. Mr. Beer, and as well as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, you're intellectualizing about illegal alien crime notwithstanding. I'd like to remind you that the correct number of American citizens murdered or raped by illegal aliens is 0. Americans have learned firsthand that importing the third world will turn America into the third world. So in light of the chaos of the past 4 years, the question that has come up earlier is, why are our Democrat colleagues so determined to flood our country with millions of illegal aliens? And I'd like to suggest that perhaps it's because they benefit from it politically. Remember that every state is apportioned congressional seats based on population, not based on citizenship. Counting non-citizens in congressional apportionment has resulted in more seats for blue states and fewer congressional seats for red states. For instance, excluding non-citizens, California would have an estimated 3 fewer congressional seats. In Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, traditionally red states would each have an estimated 1 additional seat. Right now, in a political environment where Republicans have a 2-seat majority in the House of Representatives, the presence of millions of illegal aliens in America could quite literally change the balance of power in our country. But the problem doesn't stop at congressional apportionment. The ultimate goal of mass illegal immigration is mass amnesty and citizenship for illegal aliens, which of course means ultimately allowing them to vote. And that's not a conspiracy theory either. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer himself said it just 2 years ago, and I'm quoting him, "Our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here." That is their words, not mine. And it appears that for the past 4 years, providing a path to citizenship for illegal aliens is precisely what the Biden administration has been doing. Ms. Vaughn, thanks for being here. Can you explain how through various programs the Biden administration, either via lax enforcement or through facilitating abuse, has provided a path to citizenship for illegal aliens?
Well, the main way that has occurred, or at least the most significant, are these programs that allow people who have made it into the country to obtain a status and a work permit, some of which do put them on the path to getting a green card. For example, there's the OPT program, which allows either foreign nationals who've attended U.S. schools or who've enrolled in one of these bogus strip mall schools that enables them to get a work permit through the OPT program. That is meant to be, for many of them, a bridge to another more permanent guest worker program, such as H-1B, because once they get the H-1B, then they can continue to extend that. There are also programs like the U and the T visas, which start with a work permit and eventually, once they're adjudicated without much review, allow them to receive a green card, which is a path to citizenship. There are others, including temporary protected status, which are like a de facto permanent status at this point because they're never rescinded. This is, and these are not small. We're talking about probably about 2 million people who are in these kind of quasi-legal programs that get to stay here and be considered constituents.
So 2 million people who have a path to citizenship right now. This isn't a theoretical or a hypothetical problem. This is happening right now. The political party that has nothing to offer voters but inflation, censorship, and transgenderism is weaponizing mass illegal immigration to their own political benefit. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, across this nation, men and women rise before dawn, lace up their boots, and power America forward. They drill, refine, transport, and innovate, fueling homes, factories, and cities. Yet time and again, Democrats in Washington try to strangle their livelihoods with bans, red tape, and radical restrictions. Just last month, Democrats pushed policies to lock away 670 million acres of land and water from energy production. While they push their anti-energy agenda, hardworking Americans pay the price at the pump, on their utility bills, and on their paychecks. Congressman August Pfluger's Protecting American Energy Production Act stops this sabotage. It blocks any precedent from banning fracking, unlocks leasing on public land, slashes red tape, and restores energy independence. More energy means lower costs, better jobs, and a stronger America. We must pass the Protecting American Energy Production Act. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purposes, gentlemen?
Thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. Thanks for holding this hearing today. I'm excited to serve on the Oversight and Reform Committee to help eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse within the federal government. I'm not inherently against the concept of telework in areas where it can be effective, especially in the private sector, but I am highly skeptical of public sector unions bargaining with the American taxpayer. Unlike private sector unions, of course, and the public sector unions don't have to worry about undermining the economic viability of any business or entity. In other words, there's not really a limiting principle to what they can ask for, whereas private sector unions can only bargain so much before they run their employer out of business. Public sector unions can milk working class American taxpayers limitlessly. I think that's a serious problem, and that appears to be exactly what happened here. In the federal government, telework has proven to be a really sweet deal for union bosses, with working class Americans picking up the tab. The Government Accountability Office released a report in November 2024 finding the federal government could not effectively track telework or its effects. For instance, the report found that teleworking could be contributing to the IRS correspondence backlog. And I can say nothing infuriates me more than knowing that a woke and weaponized IRS is taking forever to respond to my constituents back in Texas 26 because they've got employees who are relaxing at home. I'd love to see President Trump fix this. However, of course, the Biden administration, particularly former Social Security Administrator Martin O'Malley, have done everything possible to tie his hands to allow maximum teleworking. Former Commissioner O'Malley gave the American Federation of Government Employees a sweet deal courtesy of the taxpayer that locks in maximum teleworking until 2029, despite the fact that President Trump won in a landslide and our party, the Republican Party, has a very clear mandate to fix the chaos that the Democrats created, including in the federal government, like right here. As has been mentioned, former Commissioner O'Malley is also running to be the next chairman of the DNC, and presumably you're courting those same union bosses that you were cutting deals with not long ago.
I don't think they have a vote.
I knew D.C. was corrupt, but that is still astounding. I'd like to begin with Ms. Gressler, and thank you for being here, by the way. We appreciate it. You've written a lot about how federal employees could be spending 100% of their time working for unions instead of the taxpayer due to actions taken by the Biden administration. Could you elaborate on that? How does this harm the taxpayer?
Well, that gives those federal unions more leverage. They don't have to collect higher fees from their members because they are able to effectively fund their payrolls by having federal employees work for them instead of do the jobs that they were hired to. And I think that we should have recognized here on both sides of the aisle that telework can be a good thing, and the problem gets down to not being able to enforce it. The Biden administration tried to get agencies to get workers back into the office. People like Mr. O'Malley brought back their own staff. But when it comes down to the rank and the file, who are the union members, you couldn't get them to come back. We have Acting Secretary of the Department of Labor, Julie Su, under the self-proclaimed most pro-union administration in history, unable to get a deal to get workers to come back into the office 50% of the time. And they even said themselves, they were arguing with the union, and they said, this isn't something that you should be able to negotiate over because this is tying management's hands. And so the problem is the unions, and it's especially problematic that we are paying federal employees to step away from their jobs to do this work.
That's right. And can you tell us what specific actions could President Trump or Congress take to end this practice?
I would argue that President Trump has the authority already under his Article 2 constitutional duties to be the head of the executive. But if the unions refuse to comply and to follow orders, then Congress might need to amend the statute to specify that either no CBA authorized under a prior administration can bind his hands, or at least to open it up to the problematic components.
Got it. And you pointed out that the Biden administration removed the Office of Personnel Management's webpage documenting federal employees' use of official time. My Democrat colleagues love to talk about how the Biden administration is an ethical administration. And I'll end with this, just yes or no. Do you think that this action increased transparency and ethics or in government or not?
No, it reduced transparency.
Thank you. I yield my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you. Recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gill, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for hosting this committee. If we've learned anything so far, it's that Republicans want to cut waste, fraud, and abuse from our federal government and save taxpayer dollars, and Democrats want to grandstand and play politics. We can see right now, even of the 6 Democrats on this committee, only 1 can even be bothered to stay for the duration of this hearing. All we've heard about for most of this hearing from the other side of the aisle is Elon Musk, Elon Musk, Elon Musk, unelected bureaucrat. And I'd like to ask if Democrats really care about unelected bureaucrats making decisions over our lives, where were they whenever their god, Anthony Fauci, was forcing vaccine and mask mandates on the American people for 4 years during the, during the COVID crisis? Where were they whenever unelected Alejandro Mayorkas was facilitating the invasion of our country by illegal aliens who were murdering and raping and pillaging our people? Where were they whenever the Secretary of Education, unelected Cardona, targeted states and schools and people who were disagreed with his view of the radical left's transgender ideology? Where were they whenever Gary Gensler, former chairman of the SEC, also unelected, was lawlessly thwarting the development of financial markets, particularly in the crypto space, by lawlessly pursuing regulation via enforcement? They were nowhere to be seen because they don't care, because all of those things benefited their side of the aisle at the expense of ours. And perhaps that's also why they don't seem to be very interested in rooting out improper payments from our federal government. If you wonder why so many people are cynical about American politics, this is it. This is exactly why. The reality is that Elon Musk serves as an employee of the president, and we were given a massive mandate to carry out what he's been doing. His job is to carry out the will of the American people as expressed through the executive. That's exactly how the Constitution is supposed to work. The Constitution did not create an unelected, unaccountable fourth branch of government in the administrative state. The American people know this. My colleague Brian Jack discussed some of the opinion polls recently.
We are doing, and President Trump is doing exactly what he was elected to do. And that's why he's polling at a 53% approval rating, higher than he was at any point during his first administration. Even Elon Musk and his Doge efforts now are polling at a 49% approval rating, which, just to point out, is 16 points higher than President Biden was polling at whenever he finished his term in office. The Democrat Party has for decades systematically grown and weaponized the administrative state against the American people, and the American people have had enough of it. Right now, we're talking about $2.7 trillion in improper payments since 2003. We're uncovering what could be the biggest money laundering scandal in American history. And the other side of the aisle could care less. They have no concern about where this money went, to what entities it went, to what governments, to what people or groups. Nothing. All they want to talk about is Elon Musk incessantly. So it does make me wonder, if they don't care about where it's going, do they have an idea? Because what we've uncovered so far is that so much of the waste, fraud, and abuse of our federal government is actually funding their side of the aisle. It's funding media outlets that are running cover for Democrats routinely. The NPR, PBS, the BBC, Politico. It's going to fund left-wing NGOs that are facilitating the invasion of our country. It's going to fund left-wing transgender activism and sex changes all over the globe. This is money that's being used, taken from the American people and used against their interests. If you care about rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, we should be serious about this. I'm very excited to be on this committee. I'm excited to expose what's being going on. Thank you, Madam Chair, and with that, I yield.
The gentleman yields. In closing, I want to thank our witnesses again.
Thank you, Chairman Babin, for bringing this up. Over the past 4 years, Joe Biden and the Democrats have unleashed chaos on our country, importing over 10 million illegal aliens, including people from all over the globe associated with terrorist organizations, absolutely ripping our cultural and social fabric in two. We've essentially ceded sovereign American territory. We're importing the third world, and in the process, we're becoming the third world. That's why we can see apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado being taken over by criminal migrant gangs. We can see a lady just a couple weeks ago, American citizen, who was lit on fire by an illegal alien on a subway in New York. Our country is being taken away from us right now. In this past election cycle, Americans rejected the chaos that the left has unleashed on our nation. You have to ask yourself, why are the Democrats doing this? Why have they been doing this for so long? It's so obviously unpopular to import millions and millions and millions of people into the country. And I think we have to ask, what else are they selling? The left has nothing to sell but inflation, censorship, infanticide, and transgenderism. So they're losing elections, and in order to get over that, they need to import a new electorate. And I think that that's the motivating factor behind 4 years of open borders. Mass migration impacts congressional apportionment, taking congressional seats away from traditionally red states, benefiting traditional blue states. And we know that the left has been pushing for a path to citizenship for illegal aliens for a very long time. I think it's time that we stop allowing the left to systematically rig our elections in their favor by importing a new electorate. Chairman Babin, again, thank you very much. I think this is a great start, but we've got a lot of work to do here. So with that said, I will turn it over to the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Strong. There we go. Couldn't see the name.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Arrington, for your leadership throughout this process. Mr. Speaker, President Trump delivered historic results. He is securing our border, restoring common sense, lowering costs, and reestablishing America's strength in the world. And he is stopping our tax dollars from funding woke, perverted projects that the other side of the aisle seeks to push. But today, 60% of American taxpayers are facing rising taxes and uncertainty. To address these challenges, this resolution will provide for the extension of the Trump tax cuts, funds the largest mass deportation operation in U.S. history, and cuts at least $1.5 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse from our federal budget. This is something that should receive bipartisan support. Our commitment to fiscal discipline is clear. Conservatives on the Budget Committee added a provision that incentivizes a total of $2 trillion in reductions. The American people are begging for Washington to unlock the Trump agenda, which this bill does. They gave us a mandate to save this country. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman from
For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you so much for holding this hearing today. We've heard throughout this hearing a bit more of the same shrill calumny against President Trump and Elon Musk that we've been hearing for months now. But I am happy that a few of our colleagues did concede that we need more oversight and auditing of our foreign aid. I'd like to remind them that every time Republicans try to do that and audit where government money is going, they try to stonewall us. So I hope that they will get on board with protecting the American taxpayer. I think as it relates to foreign aid, to the extent that we do engage in foreign aid, it of course should advance American strategic geopolitical interests, our commercial interests, and of course should help ameliorate major humanitarian crises. But it ought to be rooted in realism, which is a recognition that we have strategic interests abroad that we ought to advance. And it ought to be rooted in a rational conception of the way the world actually is, and not the way some leftist secular bureaucrat at USAID believes the world should be. I think that forcing transgenderism and novel sexual fetishes on more traditional cultures does not advance American interests. It alienates the United States on the world stage. We've also seen USAID money going to oppose many of our allies abroad. Madam Chair gave a few examples, and I'll give a few more here. We've seen USAID money funding efforts to influence elections in India against Prime Minister Modi. We've seen our ally Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban accusing USAID of funding left-wing media outlets that are opposing him. We've seen USAID give $12.5 million just last year to the American Near East Refugee Agency, whose staff openly called for violence against Jews. The Refugee Agency also funded projects of the Unlimited Friends Association, which is a proxy organization for Hamas. This is not advancing our strategic interests abroad, and these are not promoting American values. Mr. Unger, I've got a couple questions for you. You've mentioned USAID as representing American ideas in action. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you believe that spending over $3 million for being LGBTQ in the Caribbean is a reflection of American ideas in action?
I believe that the programs that are focused on global health
just
and
yes or
food
no is
security,
fine. Yes or no will
the
suffice.
programs that in global health and food security and economic growth are absolutely
I'm not.
in the interest
I'm
of
talking about being LGBTQ in the Caribbean. Is that a reflection of American values? Yes or no?
I believe the programs that you're referring to are a reflection of
I'll
human
take
rights.
that as a yes. What about spending $70,000 for the production of a DEI musical in Ireland? Is that a reflection of American ideas in action? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Do you think that spending $2 million for sex changes and LGBTQ activism in Guatemala is a reflection of American values?
The information that you are using is
Yes
so
or no?
faulty that it doesn't
It's
even
a yes or no
describe to
question.
USAID projects.
No, that is a direct description of what we're spending our tax dollars. Do you think that sex
that-
changes and LGBTQ activism in
that what you're-
Guatemala
is that coming
is an
from
accurate
Doge?
reflection of American values abroad?
Is
It's a
that
yes or
data
no
coming
question.
from Doge?
Is that a yes or a no?
What I want to understand
this is
the
a
data
yes or
coming
no
from
question.
Doge? Because they counted the same
I'll take that
USAID
as-
program three
You're not going to
times.
filibuster. Reclaiming my time here. We'll go to another one. How about $1.5 million to promote job opportunities for LGBTQ individuals in Serbia? Is that a reflection of American values?
Providing job opportunities for allies around the world is absolutely in the interest of the American people.
Well, I would like to maybe challenge you if you really believe in promoting DEI. I've got about 20 seconds left. Then, in giving jobs to somebody based on their minority status or the color of their skin or their sexual proclivities, you might want to consider stepping down from your job and giving it to somebody who has more minority points than you do.
Well, if that were what
With that, I
DEI
yield.
is about,
My time
maybe
is
I would,
over.
but it's
I'm
not what
yielding.
it's about.
We'll recognize my colleague and my friend from Texas, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 160 years ago, Democrats were asking us, if it weren't for slavery, who would pick our cotton? And today they're asking a similar question, which is, if it weren't for mass migration, who would pick our avocados? It's a similar pattern that they've established. You can say that the United States is not, in fact, better off by importing a massive class of what is virtually serf labor, which undermines our cultural fabric and our government as well. I'd also like to point out that the admission that we need more and more unvetted illegal aliens pouring into our country is also an admission that the goal, or one of the goals, of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle is explicitly to reduce American wages, because that's exactly what they're doing and what they're saying they're doing whenever they talk about bringing in cheap labor. We're talking here about birthright citizenship, and which has provided an enormous loophole in our immigration system and has facilitated the mass importation of illegal aliens. Through this current loophole, upwards of 300,000 people a year are granted automatic citizenship in the United States despite being born to parents who have no ties to our country and who are here illegally. And also due to failures in our legal immigration system, these individuals then use their citizenship to sponsor their illegal alien parents and other family members for a green card, which creates a never-ending cycle of people coming into the country who have no business being here at all. We've now gotten to the point where the percentage of America's foreign-born population is quickly approaching 15%, which is the highest it's been since at least 1910. Mr. O'Brien, I'd like to start with you with a couple questions, if you don't mind. Under the 14th Amendment, Native Americans, due to tribal allegiances, were not granted citizenship. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Got it. And the children of foreign diplomats were also expressly excluded from birthright citizenship.
That's correct.
Got it. From the available evidence, is it safe to say that the authors of the 14th Amendment understood a difference between total allegiance to the United States compared to simply being subject to the legal jurisdiction by nature of presence in our country?
Yes, I think they made that very clear in the debates.
Got it. And in your opinion, based off this difference, would the authors of the 14th Amendment conclude that an individual whose parents did not owe total allegiance to the United States be granted birthright citizenship?
No, I think the import of the holding in Won Kim Ark was that only individuals who were lawfully present in the United States could transmit citizenship to their children born, or I should say, only the children born of people who were lawfully present in the United States could acquire citizenship at birth.
Mm-hmm. And despite all this, some of my colleagues here still contend that essentially any person born here, regardless of their legal status or the legal status of their parents, have a constitutional right to become a United States citizen. Have you seen any evidence to suggest that the authors of the 14th Amendment would support that view?
No, and I don't think the authors of the opinion in Juan Kim Ark would have supported it either.
Got it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield my time back to you.
Well, I thank my colleague from Texas. I would now recognize the...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing on such an important topic. Mayor Johnson, I want to start with you. One of your first actions as mayor was establishing a deputy mayor for immigrant, migrant, and refugee rights. I want to ask you a series of questions. If you could answer with a yes or no answer, that'd be great. First of all, do you support allowing illegal aliens to obtain driver's licenses? Just yes or no.
So the city of Chicago has been a welcoming city for over 40 years.
I'll take that as a yes. Next question.
And that's the policy that we will hold to.
Do you support tax dollars subsidizing or paying for the health care of illegal aliens?
I support investments in all residents of the people of Chicago, and that's what I do.
That's a yes as well. Do you support free or reduced college for illegal aliens?
Again, I support the investments of all residents of the people of Chicago.
Take that as a yes. Next question. Do you support allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections?
Again, I'm not over the jurisdiction of that type of law, but again, I'm committed to investing in all residents of the people
I'll
of Chicago.
take that as a yes. I've got an article from the Chicago Sun-Times, and I'll quote here briefly. Johnson proposed, among other things, that all residents, regardless of citizenship status, be able to vote for Chicago Board of Education members. Next question. Your website states, and this is your campaign website, quote, "I will not stop fighting until abortion access is completely secure for people all over the country," end quote. Yes or no, do you support taxpayer-funded abortions for illegal aliens?
I support the reproductive rights of all people, all women.
That is a yes as well. Your mayoral transition website mentioned support for creating a Chicago Board of Education non-citizen advisory board. Again, yes or no, do you support appointing non-citizens to government advisory boards?
I was invited here today to discuss welcoming cities.
Yes or no?
I was invited here to discuss welcoming cities.
This is a yes or no
If you're
question.
interested in asking me
You're not
questions
gonna
about the
filibuster.
welcoming
I'll
city,
take that as a
I'm
yes.
happy to
We're gonna
answer
move
those
on.
questions.
No, we're going to move on. As you know, President Trump, unlike the previous administration, has taken serious action to bring foreign criminal gangs to justice, to take our border back and to restore public safety in our communities. He designated 8 transnational criminal organizations and cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. These are groups like Tren de Aragua, MS-13, Sinaloa, other of some of the most grotesque and ruthless and brutal organizations in the world. You, as mayor of a sanctuary city, have been virtually giving favors to illegal aliens. Apparently, you support an enormous amount of taxpayer resources going to them as well. But you yourself have also received a lot of gifts. And for those of you who don't know, Mayor Johnson has a secret gift room that is not given access to the public or for access to the Office of Inspector General. I'd like to ask you a couple questions about that. Do you know everyone who's given you a gift since you became mayor?
The city of Chicago has had a policy for
That's
40
a
years
yes or no question.
where there are individuals that would like to
take-
give
no,
gifts
I'm
to the city of
reclaiming my time.
Chicago,
I'm going to take that as a
and we
no.
do not accept those
When did
gifts.
you become
we receive
mayor?
them on
No, I'm
behalf
going to reclaim my
of
time
the city
here.
of Chicago.
You're not going to filibuster here. When did you become mayor?
I was elected mayor of the city of Chicago in April of 2023, and I was sworn in May
That's good. On
15th
June
of
12th
2023.
On June 12th, 2023, you received Hugo Boss cufflinks and a personalized Mont Blanc pin. Do you know who gave you those?
So I did not receive those personally. The city of Chicago
You received those
them.
on behalf
and
of the
that's
city of
right, on behalf of
Chicago.
the city of Chicago,
I
every
understand the
mayor
difference.
in the
Do you know
history
who-
of Chicago who has
Do you know who
provided
gave those
gifts
to the city of Chicago? Do you know who gave those to the city of Chicago?
So again, on behalf of the city of Chicago, there
It's
are
a yes
gifts
or no
that are
question.
received,
Do
but I
you?
do not
Do you-
accept, those are not
So you
my
don't-
personal
so you
gifts.
don't know.
Those are the gifts of the city of
On March
Chicago,
18th,
and that's why you are aware
2024,
that they exist, because they are
reclaim
within the
my
law.
time here, sir. On March 18th, 2024, you received a Gucci tote bag. Do you know who gave you that? Gave the city of Chicago that?
Again, I was here and I was invited
I'll also
to
take that as a
respond to
no.
the
On March
questions
19th,
around
2024,
welcoming
the
city, and I'm
city of
happy to answer
Chicago
any of those
received
questions.
A Givenchy bag, a Kate Spade purse, and Carucci shoes. Do you know who gave the city of Chicago those?
Again, I was brought.
I'll
I
take
brought
that as
my
a no.
energy
I'm
here
reclaiming my time
to respond
here, sir. I am
on behalf of the
reclaiming
city
my
of Chicago
time.
of
This
what a welcoming
raises
city
serious
ordinance
ethical
is.
concerns. You're providing an enormous amount of aid to illegal aliens, aiding and abetting criminals who have come into our country illegally. And you yourself are receiving an enormous amount of gifts, and you won't even tell us who they're coming
Mr.
from. That
Chairman,
raises
time is up.
serious ethical
We have a
concerns.
5-minute rule.
Gentleman's
Mr.
time's
Chairman, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record the City of Chicago Office of Inspector General advisory concerning gifts accepted on behalf of the city.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
Distinguished gentleman, Mr. Gill from Texas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this hearing today. Ms. Koselleck, thank you for being here as well. Could you remind us in fiscal year 2024, what was the amount of improper payments that were sent out?
$162 billion.
Okay. And which agencies were primarily responsible for that?
Some of the programs that had the largest dollar amounts were Medicare, Medicaid, Earned Income Tax Credit, were some of the larger ones.
And how much do you guys at the GAO estimate we lose in fraud every year?
We did a fraud estimate for looking at data for years 2018 through 2022, and we came up with an estimate of $230 to $250 billion.
In what agencies
Annually.
do you primarily see fraud?
That
Where do you
estimate
see
was
it the
most
most?
across all programs.
Okay. Got it. So if I'm in, let's just use a specific example. If I'm a fraudster and I want to collect unemployment checks that I shouldn't be receiving, and I steal somebody else's identity to do that, and I apply to the Department of Labor, what are the processes that you would expect to see the Department of Labor go through to ensure that I don't improperly or fraudulently receive a check?
So unemployment insurance is an interesting one. It's a federal-state partnership program, so there are responsibilities at the federal level and at the state level. As I mentioned, really having those preventative controls in place, doing those data matching checks are some of the key controls that you could expect to see to have an entity have in place. And in this case, you need to have those types of controls in place at the state and at the federal level.
What do we actually see on a realistic basis? How often are some of these checks actually applied?
We have seen instances and had recommendations for unemployment, I believe, where there could be additional use by the states of some of those data checks, and I believe we have some recommendations that there could be requirements to have the states be required to do that data matching.
they're not
right now,
doing
it's
it right now.
encouraged, but we have found instances where, in all cases, that is not being done, and that can be a root cause of some of these improper payments.
So in other words, we're mailing out checks without verifying who they're going to.
In some cases.
Got it. And what are the consequences for agency heads as they're mailing out American taxpayer dollars without verifying who they're going to?
The consequence is
Yep.
that anytime there's improper payments or fraud or money going out for not the intended purpose, that's money that could be going to rightful recipients and used for other purposes.
Right, but I mean from an incentive standpoint, on the agency level, is there any consequence for either employees at the agency or agency heads for mailing out checks fraudulently?
One of the things we have recommended is having an accountable official
but I
at
mean
the
right
agencies.
now, as opposed to the recommendations, right now, is there anything to hold these people accountable?
Agencies are supposed to have an accountable official to oversee
Right,
this, but we've
But what is the accountability structure?
You should,
Do they receive less bonuses, for instance? Are they fired? What's holding them accountable?
I think that is determined by the agency as to how that mechanism is 100% set up, but certainly Congress can have accountability mechanisms.
Well, what do you see? Have you ever seen an agency head get fired, for instance, for mailing out billions of dollars in fraudulent checks?
I have not seen that.
Got it. Okay. And once we mail these checks out, is there any way of clawing this money back and holding the fraudsters accountable?
That's what you're saying. The pay and chase model is not generally effective. There are requirements that anytime there is an improper payment, agencies are supposed to attempt to get that money back. But we have found that the percentage that you get back when you're following that model, as opposed to not having to go out, preventing it is by far much more effective.
Right. Completely agreed. I mean, it seems to me that we've got an overextended bureaucratic administrative leviathan that is mailing out American taxpayer dollars fraudulently with virtually no accountability at all, bankrupting the American people with impunity. And this is from a federal government that ostensibly works in the interests of American citizens, is instead wasting our taxpayer dollars on a scale that is difficult to fathom. I think this is precisely why we need Doge so badly to get this nonsense under control. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back, and thank you very much.
Appreciate the gentleman's questions. The distinguished
From Texas, Mr. Gill, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lawfare is antithetical to the American experiment. It's explicitly contrary to the rule of law, but yet it seems to have been the Democrats' last-ditch effort to win the 2024 election cycle. In the lead-up to the 2024 election, Democrats knew that they couldn't fairly win. They were running a candidate whose cognitive state was in question, that was declining before our very eyes on national TV while they were trying to tell us that he was sharper than ever. Their political strategy reminds me of the line in Orwell's 1984, which was, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears." It was their final, most essential command, and that was consistent with the left's messaging. They were trying to tell the American people, for instance, that defunding the police makes our communities safer, that men can get pregnant and should be sharing locker rooms with our daughters, and that flooding our country with millions of cheap serf laborers would be somehow economically beneficial to our working class. But in order to get over this messaging issue, they attempted to, again, flood the country with people that they thought would eventually become Democrat voters, knowing even now that our election system had legitimate vulnerabilities to it. They directed social media companies to censor lawful speech of American citizens and illegally put President Trump behind bars for made-up federal charges in an attempt to prevent him from getting back into the White House. What we witnessed was a grotesque exercise of raw political power by the Democrats against their enemies. And that's why I'm excited about our markup tomorrow. We've got a series of bills that I think are a good first step in helping ensure this lawfare doesn't happen again. But I want to talk about one instance in particular, which was Democrats calling upon corrupt state-level officials to peruse state-level lawfare and punish President Trump and the millions of Americans who supported his campaign. Their one last hope leading up to the election was to concoct a novel legal theory by Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg in the state of New York didn't have jurisdiction to hear this case. They knew that moving forward would violate settled Supreme Court doctrine, but again, this was their last best hope. The state of New York, with Democrat donor Judge Juan Merchan overseeing the case, finally got their wish. They landed a conviction of the president. But the American people knew it was a sham, and now they know the lengths to which the other side of the aisle will go to attack their political opposition. Mr. Epstein, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it and appreciate your work to restore law and order in this country. I want to ask you a couple questions. The charges in the case against President Trump in New York largely revolve around the Federal Election Campaign Act. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
But that act grants exclusive jurisdiction over federal election issues to the FEC and the DOJ. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did the state of New York and DA Bragg have any jurisdiction over those supposed campaign finance violations?
No, and in fact, Congressman, I would point out that President Trump, during his first administration, made disclosures about payments in his financial disclosures, which is clear evidence that that's a kind of federal nexus, and it's wholly within not just the FEC, but the Office of Government Ethics.
And Alvin Bragg was certainly aware he was pursuing a frivolous case here, yet he decided to very aggressively and very publicly move forward with support from the Biden DOJ. What motive do you think, or would you ascribe to Bragg to move forward with such a clearly baseless case?
You know, I can't speculate on what his motives were, but I think enough is spoken by how the American people recently determined who should be the President of the United States. And I think that there is a general view in the public mood of the American public that looking to prosecute political enemies raises serious concerns about not just the law, but what culture do we want in America.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Epstein. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, you see request? This is from Reuters, January 20th. Who has Donald Trump threatened to criminally prosecute?
And now it's my pleasure to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, another border state, a newcomer who's setting the world on fire, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past 4 years, Joe Biden and the Democrats have inundated American communities with massive numbers of violent illegal aliens who are murdering and raping and torturing and pillaging our people on our soil. And the entire time they did it not by accident, but as a deliberate policy decision to open up our borders and flood our country with people that they believed would be future Democrat voters for life. It was also, we have to remember, a part of a policy that was done with the approbation of a cheap labor lobby who wanted to import millions of people who would act as a virtual new serf class of laborers to reduce American working class wages in this country. The consequences of this were absolutely catastrophic for the American people. Almost 15 million illegal aliens, perhaps more, depending on what estimates we use, have come into this country. Thankfully, this nightmare is finally over because we have a president who actually cares about the American people. We have a president who doesn't make excuses, a president who doesn't tell us lies like the executive needs to rely on new laws to enforce our border, a president who actually just gets the job done. His border enforcement efforts have caused known gotaways to fall by 93%, with an average of just 132 a day right now. And even as this nightmare in our country is finally coming to a close, we've got colleagues on the other side of the aisle right now who are facilitating this invasion as best they can and going back to their districts and helping protect illegal aliens who have no business being here in the first place and teaching them how to evade ICE detection. Absolutely disgusting, Mr. Speaker. We have got to codify President Trump's border policies into law so that we cannot let the other side of the aisle unleash the same kind of hell on our country that they did over the past 4 years. We've got to codify every single executive order, including his Remain in Mexico policy. I've got a bill, the Remain in Mexico Act, that would do precisely that. We've got over 100 co-sponsors. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to bring this bill to the floor. This is what the American people want. This is what the president wants. And I think we need to act fast. So with that, I yield back and thank you guys very much.
I thank the gentleman. I thank him for his passion and he's right. He's right. We do need to codify President Trump's policies because we cannot ever go back to a period of time like we just experienced under the Biden regime.
Gill.
Thank you, Chairwoman Green, and I apologize. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm losing my voice here. Ms. Marr, I want to start with you. Just generally, would you say you generally agree or disagree with the following statement? The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles?
I would not say I agree with that, sir.
You're not. That's good to hear. It's interesting because a lot of your thinking, as expressed by your public statements, is deeply infused with economic and cultural Marxism. Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I've never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted. Okay, how much reparations have you personally paid?
Sir, I don't believe that I've ever paid reparations.
Okay, it's just for everybody else.
I'm not asking anyone to pay reparations.
Seems to be what you're suggesting. Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being illegal.
You tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time at NPR.
You tweeted that you read that book, but...
I don't believe that I did read that book, sir.
Do you think that a few years ago, NPR educated America about, quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts? Do you think that that's an appropriate use of tax dollars?
I was not at NPR at the time, sir.
That's not the question, though. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of our tax dollars?
I think our tax dollars that we use are to be able to provide a wide range of
I'll take that as a yes. You do believe that that's appropriate. Your health advisor at NPR also stated in an interview that, quote, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. Would you like to explain how fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat? That's an editorial at NPR.
I am not familiar with the editorial, and I don't believe that was published during my time here.
It's called Diet Culture is Everywhere. Here's how to fight it. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I think any reporting on health is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars, yes.
And you think that editorializing that fat is not unhealthy is appropriate?
I don't know what that article is, sir, and I'm not familiar with it, so I
This
couldn't
is
say.
fake news. Do you think that basic accommodations like doorways or seat belts represent, quote, latent fat phobia?
I don't have an opinion.
It's also from NPR. Do you think civility is racist?
No, sir.
No. Well, your outlet ran an article entitled, quote, When Civility is Used as a Cudgel Against People of Color. That was on All Things Considered. Would you like to explain?
I'm not on the editorial side, sir. I'm not familiar with that story.
You talk about how NPR is news. This is editorialization, and I'll read it. For many people of color in the United States, civility isn't so much social lubricant as it is a vehicle for containing them, preventing social mobility, and preserving the status quo. This is garbage. I'll spend all of my time doing everything I can to ensure you guys never get another dollar of taxpayer funding. This is complete garbage. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. I now recognize.
I thank the gentleman. I now recognize the gentleman for Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for having this incredibly important hearing where we can better understand the systematic abuses of the Biden administration for the past 4 years. Our colleagues on the other side want to encourage us to move on from a federal government that was weaponized against the American people that they are supposed to represent and protect. Move on after our FBI was targeting parents who were concerned that their children were being indoctrinated into radical transgender ideologies in their public schools. Move on after the left weaponized the federal government to create a mass censorship industrial complex violating our First Amendment rights. We're supposed to move on after they targeted Catholic Americans, traditional Americans, and labeled them violent extremists. We're told that there's a problem that we can't agree on what's right and wrong, and I agree, that is a huge problem. It's a problem that the other side of the aisle can't recognize that censorship is wrong. It's a problem that the other side of the aisle can't recognize that it's wrong for the FBI to target parents concerned about what they're learning in their schools. It's a problem that the other side of the aisle can't recognize that it's a problem whenever our federal government goes after Christian Americans. That's a serious problem, and that's something we should be able to agree on, but unfortunately, we can't. We saw unprecedented levels of weaponization under the Biden administration against the same American people that it was supposed to be looking out for. Christopher Wray created an internal memo that slandered traditional Catholics as anti-Semites and white supremacists. It suggested that the FBI monitor traditional Catholics and even set the stage for FBI informants entering places of worship. At the same time, remember, this was happening while Joe Biden was, of course, facilitating the mass immigration of illegal criminals into our country. Not keeping us safe in that instance, that's for sure. Thankfully, and I think the American people are very thankful that we finally have a president and a head of the FBI and head of the DOJ who actually represent us and want to protect us. I want to thank all of the witnesses for being here. We really appreciate your testimony and your time here. Mr. Whitson, I'd like to start with you. The FBI utilized a so-called hate map from the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, as it was going after traditional Catholics and labeling them domestic extremists. Do you think that that's an appropriate source?
Absolutely not.
Do you know some of the other groups that the SPLC labels as hate groups or extremist groups?
No, I don't, off the top of my head.
I can name a few. They also name the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Family Research Council, and Moms for Liberty as hate groups as well. Do you find it concerning that they were using the SPLC as a source?
Yeah, I find it deeply concerning.
Do you think that Catholics who celebrate the traditional Latin Mass are a threat to the American people?
I don't, because I'm one that does that on occasion.
Can you recall, before Joe Biden was in office, any time whenever the FBI specifically targeted a group of Americans solely because of their religious faith?
No.
Do you think there's any evidence to suggest that harassing Catholic Americans keeps Americans safe?
Not at all.
Got it. Do you think that that we've seen a move away from this sort of flagrant weaponization since President Trump has entered office?
Absolutely.
And what do you think that this committee can do to help ensure that we don't see a return of that sort of weaponization?
Well, I think number one, it's accountability, right? That's not going to surprise you. I'm from the Foundation for Government Accountability. And so it's not enough to identify a problem and then just move on. You've got to hold people accountable. And it's going back to the earlier point. If you want to re-earn the trust of Americans in the FBI, they have to see people held accountable. But then at the same time, you need to refocus and look at what are the problems we have right now, and that's the wide open border, that's the violent crime, and so you need to press the FBI to make sure they're pushing resources where they should.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize, once I give him a little second here to get seated, my friend from Texas, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing today. In foreign countries, we refer to gender reassignment surgeries as child genital mutilation. In the U.S., we have a much more medicalized and sterile terminology that we use of a gender reassignment surgery. It's utterly barbaric, and thankfully we have a president who's serious about ending it. Dr. Heim, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate all the work that you have done and your bravery throughout this process. I'd like to ask you a few questions. There's a far-left organization, and it's known as the Campaign for Southern Equality, and it publicly posts a fact sheet, with commonly used insurance codes. The group claims that, quote, this information can help guide providers about insurance codes for trans healthcare that are commonly accepted and rejected, end quote. Are you aware of this fact sheet?
I am aware.
You are. Could you explain maybe a little bit about the sheet and what it's commonly used for?
So this is really important because when you type in gender-affirming care diagnosis codes on Google, this is one of the top search results. What this document does is inform doctors at these clinics how to get insurance companies, whether private or government, to cover interventions without revealing that it's being used for gender dysphoria, right? So how do you do a mastectomy, but then bill an insurance company and not raise any red flags? For example, like if it's happening in a red state. Right? Well, you bill it as breast reduction instead of a mastectomy, right? If you have a girl, right, like a 14-year-old girl who you want to prescribe, testosterone for quote-unquote gender-affirming care, you put a male sex in the medical chart, and then you prescribe testosterone for testosterone deficiency. The only thing the insurance company sees is male testosterone deficiency, no red flags are raised. They don't know that they're getting defrauded. But what this guide is essentially a template for how to commit medical fraud. And we should all remember, this is something that people go to prison for. This is a major deal. They have entire departments at hospitals for this.
That's right. So this is a way of guiding doctors of how to defraud insurance companies. Is that correct? How to lie to them?
That's what it says in that. Other language, right? They try and dress it up and make it sound nice, but that's what they're saying.
And this is something that could and likely is being used to subvert the president's executive order. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. It's my suspicion this is happening all over the country, especially in red states.
And in your time in the medical field, have you seen this tactic being used to defraud insurance companies or to misrepresent surgeries that are being done?
In my personal practice, no. No, because it's such a big deal.
Right.
Like, everything you do has to be by the books. Everything you write on a medical chart has to be true. It has to support a certain diagnosis. That diagnosis has to be related to a treatment. If there's any break in that link, that's a big problem. People go to prison for that.
Have you ever heard of a healthcare provider using some of these tactics or using a wrong insurance code?
Yeah, I've heard about it, and those people are in prison.
Mm-hmm. And you suspect, to be clear, that this is currently a recurring practice?
Yeah, and there's a few cases in Texas where the Attorney General of Texas has, and of course this is before litigation. We have to remember that people are innocent until proven guilty. That he brought 3 doctors in Texas up for violating SB 14, right? For a similar scheme which has been outlined in his suits against them, where they're using false diagnoses and then misrepresented sexes in order to bill insurance companies to conceal, quote unquote, gender affirming care in Texas after the passage of SB 14.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you, Dr. Heim. I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
I appreciate my friend from Texas. I appreciate the witnesses. Ms. Sivage, earlier, your credentials as a nurse were challenged, I think, with respect to your ability to make the observations you came here to testify. Would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. I think Ms. Walters, said it best that we had a secure border under President Trump in his first term, that Joe Biden opened the floodgates, and now President Trump is cleaning up Joe Biden's mess. So that was very well said. I'd like to begin with Major Franklin. Thank you for being here. Do you know what percentage of illegal aliens reside in sanctuary cities, roughly?
No, I don't.
It's about 56%, rough numbers. And is it your testimony, and I've got your written testimony here, that local law enforcement should not dedicate time and resources towards information sharing and detainer requirements?
It's about, generally speaking, yes, it's about the context.
It's about the context. So I'll take that.
Specific circumstances, yeah.
So there's some criminal illegal aliens they should
I think
release.
it's more about having good policies on how and when the communication will occur.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Let me ask you, do sanctuary city policies and mass illegal immigration help American citizens enter the labor force? Yes or no?
I don't know. That's not my area of expertise.
Okay, you don't know. Do sanctuary cities and mass illegal immigration help lower housing costs? Yes or no? You don't know? Yep. Do they help reduce the strain on public services or public benefits? You don't know? Okay. Do you think that illegal aliens, you're saying that they should have safe harbor essentially in our cities? Should they have free access to medical care?
They should have access to medical care.
Should they have taxpayer subsidized access to medical care?
Depends upon the circumstances, I guess. I don't know.
What about taxpayer subsidized education?
It's not my area of expertise.
Okay, public housing?
Not my area.
You don't know? You're inviting them to come into our cities, but you don't have a position on what should happen to them then, other than that illegal aliens should
I'm not
be
inviting
detained.
anyone.
Well, you essentially are, actually. Would you describe Baltimore as a safe city?
What's your definition of safe?
I'm asking you, is Baltimore a safe city? Is it the kind of city that you would want to raise a family and maybe go jogging in without having to be worried about being murdered or raped?
I grew up in Baltimore. My family is in Baltimore. My mother still lives in the same house in West Baltimore.
Is it a safe city?
60+ years, so the answer is definitely yes.
You think Baltimore is a safe city?
Of course it is.
Okay, do you know what the homicide rate is in Baltimore?
Exactly, no.
It's about 35 per 100,000. Do you know what the homicide rate is in the rest of the United States?
No, I don't.
I can tell you that the homicide rate in Baltimore is about 5 times the national average. Do you know how Baltimore's robbery rate compares to the rest of the United States?
At the moment, no, I don't.
You don't? It's about 8.4 times the national average. Do you know how Baltimore's assault rate compares to the national average?
No, I don't.
It's about 3.4 times higher. Does that sound like a safe city to you?
Safe to me and my family members.
So that's safe to you? 5 times higher than the national average for homicides? That's a safe city?
Perception.
It's what, excuse me?
I said it's what for instance, it's perception. It's what you feel as a resident in Baltimore City.
If you're murdered, I don't think it matters what you feel, do you? Is it your testimony that the safety
Baltimore City
depends on how
city.
people feel?
To me, Baltimore City is a safe city.
To you, it's a safe city. I don't think it's safe to the people who are being murdered every single weekend there. Let me ask you, picking up on Mr. Knott's questioning, do you think that it's appropriate for local law enforcement to not honor immigration detainers and to release criminal and illegal aliens into our cities?
We go by what the courts dictate.
Well, I'm asking you if you think that that's an appropriate response. You arrest an illegal alien for a crime. That person has an immigration detainer. You think that it's appropriate to release them, yes or no?
When the courts say release them, yes.
Do you think that keeps Baltimore safe?
If it's done appropriately, yes.
No, so you do?
Yes.
You think that that's a good way to keep...
When it's done appropriately according to the law, we cannot sidestep the law because we carry badges. We have to go by the law.
My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent.
I now recognize Mr. Gill from Texas.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This is an excellent hearing, and we really, really appreciate your leadership, incredible leadership on this topic and on this issue. And I'd also like to thank our witnesses, Ms. Turner and Ms. McNabb, for particularly moving testimonies. And thank you for your bravery for coming here. I know it takes a lot of guts to testify before a congressional committee. Mr. Layfield, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Do you think that men should be allowed in women's locker rooms?
Sir, those regulations are set by tournament
I'm just
organizers.
asking you yes or no. Do you think men should be allowed in women's locker rooms?
I don't have a personal opinion on
You don't have you have a personal opinion on a lot of things, but not on that?
Sure. I mean, it's a locker room is not really an area where people interact.
So the answer is yes.
I don't
Do you
really
think
have
that men should be allowed to share showers with women in athletic facilities?
I think that showering is a private activity and that it should be private.
And it should be private. There's oftentimes communal showers. Are you okay with men showering with women?
I don't have an opinion on that in the context of USA.
You don't? Interesting. That's an astounding thing to not have an opinion on. I think most normal people have an opinion on that. Are you okay with women being at a disadvantage when competing against men in sports?
Sir, mixed events happen all the time, and women are
that's
often...
not my question. Are you okay with, let me ask it this way, are you okay with cis females being at a disadvantage?
If their competitor, assuming that you're talking about...
It's a yes or no question.
Female, that they've met the requirements set forth in the policy...
Why did you post on social media for the world to see? You were asked in an anonymous question, which you posted online, are you okay with cis females being at a disadvantage? You said, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it was Congressman Cloud that had asked me about that, sir, and I'm happy to address it again. That was a one-word answer to a more nuanced topic, and I feel like if I could take it back and expound a little bit more than what I had there.
Reclaiming my time.
Sure.
Do you think that do you think that parents who don't want their daughters competing against men in women's sports are whiny?
No, sir.
You don't? Why did you write that on social media? I've got a picture here where you posted that. You were allegedly responding to a parent who didn't want their daughter being beaten up by men in sports competitions. You said, I'm not going to pull her from the sport and write a whiny email announcing my departure.
Sir, Congressman Jack had asked me about that, and want to be crystal clear, that was an inappropriate message.
Do you think that they're cowardly?
Sir, no, I don't. I don't at all. And in fact...
Why did you write that on social media?
I regret it, sir. I deleted it shortly after posting, and I certainly don't feel that way anymore. And given a lot of the messages that we receive, and even conversations that I've had...
Do you think that
Ms.
parents
Turner,
who don't want their daughters competing against men in sports should be compared to the Ku Klux Klan?
No, absolutely not. And I
why
acknowledge
did you
that I
do
said
that?
that in the message, sir.
Why did
that
you
was
do that?
inappropriate.
That was inappropriate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're right. That isn't inappropriate. I'd like to read what you wrote and what you posted on social media.
Sure.
Responding allegedly to a lady who had these concerns. The only wizard that's going to dig you out of the myopic hole you've put yourself and your family in is one of the, quote, grand wizard variety.
Inappropriate, sir, and I acknowledge that I said it, and I will commit to never making a message like that again.
That was in response to a parent, according to you on social media, who had a problem with this. Was this a real email that you were responding to?
It was a real email, sir. I did not respond to it and hit send.
This was a real email. Did an actual parent write this, or did you write this email?
It was written by an actual person claiming to be a parent. They were not a member of our
Were you that actual person?
No, sir.
You were
I
not
was
that actual person, but you staged this whole interaction.
The response, sir, was not real, and I regret that.
Okay. You think inclusivity presumably is a big part of the fencing community, is that right?
I would say so, sir. We're a very welcoming community, and I'm proud of that.
Are you welcoming to Trump supporters?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Then why did you, in your Facebook page, from the fencing coach, write, imagine being one of 71 million people dumb enough to vote re-election for a treasonous clown who's permanently banned from Twitter for inciting an insurrection, you mad MAGA bros?
I acknowledge that I stated that in my personal capacity, sir. However, as chair,
that was from the fencing coach.
I have to acknowledge that 77 million people voted for him in re-election.
That wasn't your personal capacity. That was from your capacity as, quote, the fencing coach online.
Yes, that is my blog, sir. That's my publication, and I acknowledge writing that.
All right, my time is up. Thank you. I yield back.
Wow. Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Gill.
The gentleman from the great state of Texas, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here and testifying and taking the time. Mr. Pirtle, thank you as well. I want to start with you. Given the decline in personnel across BOP facilities, and we've got nearly 4,000 vacancies, do you believe it was a wise decision for the previous administration to put any resources at all towards gender-affirming care for BOP inmates?
As I said earlier, I think that it's such a small percent of the population. It's not the core issues that BOP is facing.
Right, and I certainly believe it's not a core issue we should be spending money towards. Is it also the case that BOP facilities are experiencing widespread deterioration and are in need of maintenance?
According to the Attorney General's inspector, the department's inspector general, literally every single facility faces deferred expenses, deferred maintenance expenses.
Yep. Do you think that there's additional stress that comes with perhaps some of the logistical challenges and safety concerns of housing transgender inmates with the opposite sex, and perhaps maybe that contributed to some of the low retention rates and hiring rates experienced at the BOP?
In all honesty, I couldn't say. Once again, I think that there's so many issues that go into the staffing issue. Did it play a part? Very well could have, but there are so many factors there.
And what about some of the anti-law enforcement rhetoric that we hear on the other side of the aisle, including from the former vice president who once praised the defund the police movement? Do you think that that's contributed at all to some of the staffing challenges at BOP?
Well, I think the fact that law enforcement, prosecutors, corrections officers, I think that there's been an unfortunate trend. We've seen it in law school recruiting for prosecutors, that there's been an unfortunate trend to kind of demonize the entire field, regardless of wherever that has come from. I think that has been harmful. I think it's unfair to the people who go into that line of work.
In what role do you think Doge can play in identifying waste and fraud at the BOP?
That is beyond my kin. I'm so sorry. No.
Any guesses?
Well, as I tell my kids, as with any very, very large institution, there's going to be waste and fraud, even when the vast majority of people are working in good faith. Mm-hmm. It never hurts. It's always good to pop the hood and check the oil and take a look at what's going on. So I think that the Doge process I think it may turn out to be very, very beneficial. I think a lot of it is going to be able to inform you in your oversight activities to make decisions going forward.
Got it. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, with that, I'll yield the remainder of my time back to you.
Thank you. So with that little bit of time, first of all, I really do appreciate you all being here. It's a long, long day. I didn't even give you a chance for a break, and I probably should have. I was remiss, but it was glad because now we're done. Secondly, I'll say as I did before, I hope that we can move forward in some areas, in some ways, find common ground. And thirdly, and the one thing I will mention with the little bit of time left, I've actually interviewed some corrections officers at multiple locations who've come to me in my office. I wouldn't call them whistleblowers because they didn't, trigger the Whistleblower Act, but told me stories. We're kind of saying that there's like 1 or 2 people in the whole country with transgender issues. They're still doing intake, and it costs a lot of money on those that want to change their sex, that want to be transgender. This is from corrections officers who directly work there, who have good reputations, whom I know, that were explaining what's going on. Number one, that costs money. Secondly, the other issue and the reason that it costs money is because, as you know, I mentioned, in fact, my facility back home has to cater to some of that because when they mix with the rest of the population, unfortunately, there are issues for them, for their own security and safety. So it makes things more complicated. It makes issues, more violence is prone to happen, and it also costs more because of the specialization they need, both medical, if they go through it all the way, as well as correctional. In other words, they need more protection, and they need to have special status and special help. So yeah, it does cost money, and no, it's not just like one person in all 50 states. It's not. In fact, if you talk to most of them, almost any facility will tell you some of the issues they're having with that. And the real issue is, I don't know how else to say it. I'm not saying they should be, but they still have their desires very often, and it really is tough on the women. If we care about women, then we should care about this issue and some of the terrible things that are happening. With that, it concludes today.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, I have 2 UCs. I'm sorry. The first one, I asked unanimous consent to enter into the record an article. Transgender inmates are.
Gentleman yields back. Okay, and I recognize the gentleman from the great state of Texas, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing today on what I believe to be one of the most, probably the most important issue that our country faces right now, which is illegal immigration. Mr. Hauser, I've got a few questions for you. You were Chief of Staff for ICE, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What years were you there?
2021 to 2023.
So that was during the Biden administration, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Got it. So presumably you're well-versed in border security and immigration enforcement, is that right?
Yes, sir. I would say that I'm very aware. I also worked at CBP under the Obama administration. Yes, sir.
Got it. So you've got a lot of experience there. I'm going to ask you a few questions. In an interview with the Daily Blast on February 28th, 2024, you mentioned, quote, "You can't deter and punish your way to lowering encounters at the border," end quote. Do you think you were right or wrong about that?
100%, sir. What we've seen.
100% what? Right or wrong?
100% I was correct.
You were correct about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The idea that you just dismantle an immigration system is not, there was a mandate to the Trump administration.
Illegal alien border encounters are down 95% right now. I think you were wrong about that. You also said, quote, "The idea that you can turn off the border is just not factual." Do you think that was right or wrong?
Sir, the threats that we're still seeing across the border.
Do you think you were right or wrong about that statement?
What's that, sir?
My question is, were you right or wrong about that statement?
When you
That
turn
can
off
just
the
turn off
immigration
border?
system, sir, yes, you will not see encounters. Yes.
Well, southwestern border encounters are at a 15-year low under President Trump. Another thing that you mentioned, quote, "Just shutting off the border to asylum seekers is not going to do that," meaning close the border. What I think is going to do that is make it more erratic and sporadic for the sort of large surges of migrants you would see coming across the border. Do you think that was right or wrong?
100% correct. It was correct, sir. We're going to see that over the next couple years. Yes, sir.
Border apprehensions are down now because President Trump has secured our border. He's stopped the flow of illegal aliens coming across our border and coming to our border. Do you think that we have a better or worse border situation now than we did under Joe Biden?
Sir, I believe the border is secure.
You believe the border's secure, that's right. But you were wrong about a lot of other things, about what would secure the border, is that right?
No, sir, it's only been 100 days.
You were wrong about what it would take to stop the flow of illegal aliens coming into the United States. You were wrong that secure enforcement that we're seeing under President Trump would stop the flow of illegal aliens. You ought to keep that in mind as you're going to the media and mouthing off about the president.
Can I answer that question?
Let me ask you another question. This is from a New York Times op-ed that you wrote just a month ago.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned, quote, federal law enforcement under President Trump is engaged in dangerous political theater. What about President Trump's law enforcement do you think is dangerous political theater? Do you think that
Sir, I think
seizing
setting quotas,
235,000 pounds of
quotas
fentanyl
by
at the
political
border is
appointees in the
dangerous
White
political
House
theater?
is a problem.
Do you think seizing fentanyl at our border is dangerous
sir.
political theater? Do you know who Gilberto Avila Jara is?
So that's exactly where ICE should have their resources focused. That's exactly where
And
this
we
administration
did, and
is
he was
beginning to turn
arrested
them away
last
from.
month and charged with over 20 sex crimes against minors.
Yes, sir.
These were the kind of people that Joe
Taking
Biden
2,000
and
CBP
under your
officers
leadership
off the border
were coming into
over
our
the next
country.
3 months doesn't make us more safe. Taking HSI agents away
Taking-
from drug interdiction, and
Taking murderers and
trafficking,
rapists
human
off our
smuggling
streets makes the American
doesn't make
people
us
more safe. It's your testimony that taking murderers and rapists off our streets does not make us more safe?
What I'm saying,
is that what
sir,
you're
is
telling
over,
me?
what we have heard from this administration is over the next few months, there's going to be thousands of law enforcement focused on non-criminal migrants.
We'll see.
Instead
You
of
were
the
you were
exact
wrong
same
about a
threats
lot
we
of things.
both
I don't
agree
put a
over.
whole lot of stock into that, candidly, and I don't think the American people do either. Do you support amnesty?
No, sir.
Do you support amnesty for illegal aliens?
No, sir.
In this New York Times article, you wrote, quote, that means that the best solution for public safety is not mass deportations.
No, I
it's giving
support
undocumented,
focused
I'm
immigration support
speaking
for
right
migrants
now.
that need
This is my
protection
time,
under our
not
law.
yours. I'm speaking. It's giving undocumented immigrants who have been in the United States for a long time the opportunity to come forward, pay a fine, and gain legal status. That
Yes, sir.
sounds a lot like amnesty to me, doesn't it, to
It's
you?
a process, sir, under the law that could exercise and allow them for
That's
migrants to come out of the
amnesty.
shadows and then focus.
That's what amnesty is. This is a deliberate semantic obfuscation, and you know it, and I know it, and the American people know it as
it's not,
well. Do you think that illegal aliens should be given welfare once they get amnesty?
Sir, that's not my department.
You've got a lot of opinions on a whole lot of different things. You don't have an opinion
Areas
on that?
where I've worked for 20 years, sir. Yes, sir.
And finally, let me ask you, do you think that Biden was successful at stopping illegal immigration?
There was failures at the beginning of the Biden administration to deal with the flow of migrants post-COVID, and then there was failures of implementation of policies across all of the immigration system. That's the same problems we're seeing now. The idea that you can enforce your way out of immigration and the challenges that we see across the Western Hemisphere, it's not going to work.
We had an open border under Biden. The border's secure now. I think that's a successful Trump policy and a failure of the Biden administration. I yield my time back. Thank you.
Mr. Gill, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. It's nice to be part of a bipartisan hearing where I think we can all agree on what our goals are here. And thank you to the witnesses as well for taking the time here. Mr. Mansfield, can you remind us what the Department of Defense's budget was in 2017? In 2017? Okay, it was about 582 billion, roughly. Do you know what it was in 2024? 910 billion, so it's a pretty substantial increase, is it not? That's a lot of money.
Sorry. Yes, I didn't have my mic on. I apologize.
And can you remind us if the DoD has ever passed an audit?
At the agency-wide level, no.
Got it. And how many audits has it had recently?
7 full-scale audits.
And how much do those cost?
So this year, the cost of audit is right around $211 million.
$211 million this year.
I think that's right. Yes.
So it's a lot of money. That's a pretty substantial audit, is it not?
It is.
Got it. And can you sort of walk us through some of the high-level reasons why the DoD hasn't been able to pass an audit?
Well, it goes back to what we've been talking about here. Systems is one of the main things, right? And then more importantly, you can have the best system in the world, but if the data that's within that system isn't accurate, reliable, and supported, the system doesn't matter. So it gets to the fundamentals of accounting and just operationalizing good controls. So when you receive a shipment, you count how many things are in it, you validate that the cost of your charge is what you expected, you make sure you've got the right line of funding to pay for that, and then you make sure it's in your books in the appropriate place so you know where it's at and what the condition is. If those pieces are missing, the systems aren't going to matter. And then, as Mr. Khan indicated, the other thing is the planning process for the department and the way it makes decisions. They're made piecemeal. They're made throughout the department individually for the good of the individual entity, not always with consideration for the overall DoD approach. And so I think that is one of the reasons why I have so many problems setting milestones and sticking with them, is so many individuals making decisions for their own interest versus stepping back and saying, what's the best system for multiple entities using at the same time.
So you have a pretty good idea what needs to be done in order to pass an audit, at least at a high level. Can you help us understand why we haven't passed an audit recently?
But just lack of execution on the fundamentals is what I would say.
And who's held accountable for that? And what are the consequences whenever the DoD fails to pass an audit?
Well, the real consequence is lack of confidence for the taxpayer in the DoD's ability to account for and spend its money.
I agree, but within the DoD, for instance, is there somebody who gets fired, who gets demoted, who sees their bonuses decreased? Is there any actual action taken against any individual or group within the DoD for failing to pass an audit?
I can't speak to individual personnel actions, but I can say in recent years, the DoD has added, at least at the executive level, an element in the performance plans for their executives related to financial readiness, getting down to the ability to support individual transactions. So there's an accountability measure they have now. It's up to the department's management to use that effectively in order to spur change, though.
Right, but in other words, we're talking about a budget of hundreds of billions of dollars every single year and large portions of that are unaccounted for. We don't know where this money is going. This is taxing my constituents, all of our constituents here, hardworking Americans to keep our country safe, which again is something we all agree with, and we haven't seen anybody fired for what seems to be appears to be largely a total lack of accountability. We haven't seen any punitive measures against anybody in the DoD. Is that right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Got it. I think that as we're thinking about hundreds of billions of dollars that should be keeping the American people safe, the American people expect transparency, they expect accountability, they expect to know where their hard-earned tax dollars are going, and we've got to see some progress here. So thank you very much for your time.
Gentleman yields back his time.
Thank you, and I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. And thank you to the witnesses for taking the time. We really sincerely appreciate it. Mr. Lieberman, the one big beautiful bill phases out the IRA and its harmful green energy subsidies. While phasing these subsidies out, I think is a great start. I think ideally we'd repeal these immediately. We ran on repealing the Green New Deal. Every single Republican ran on repealing the Green New Deal. I think it's about time that we actually execute on that promise. Can you elaborate on the importance of repealing IRA green energy subsidies?
Yes, the same army of lobbyists that gave us the Inflation Reduction Act will be back whenever those phase-out deadlines come, asking for extensions. I was on the Hill for several years. I had dozens and dozens of meetings with lobbyists for subsidized alternative energy companies, always asking for more, raising the caps, extending the deadlines. It never happened that one of them came to me and said, we're not an infant industry anymore, you can end the subsidies. There's always a demand for more, and it's very tough to stop these things, as you know full well. There's so many must-pass bills that these things can be slipped into every year. So phasing them out is really not phasing them out. So repeal would be far and away the best option.
Yep, government handouts are like a drug. Once you give them out, it's very, very hard to pull them back. And we've seen the army of K Street descending upon Washington to keep these handouts in place.
Could you just help us understand a little bit more about how much we might be able to save by repealing the Green New Deal?
Well, I think Dr. McBride has the numbers a little bit better than me, but it's certainly well into the hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of reduced tax credits and other subsidies. And then there's the additional effects. So many of the favored energy sources and technologies have problems of their own that will impose costs. So best to stop these bad ideas in the bud.
Right. Could you walk us through how some of these subsidies have distorted the energy market?
Well, for example, when wind and solar are very heavily subsidized, that's what's going to be built. But and that's fine on a sunny day, on a day where the wind is blowing at an ideal speed. But there will be those times where you need backup power. But there's no incentive really for that backup power. Who wants to spend on a natural gas plant that has to sit idle and yield to wind and solar and only turn on and be able to sell energy for those moments where a blackout needs to be avoided? It's not a winning economic business model. And that's, I think, something that's true throughout the Inflation Reduction Act. It doesn't ban gasoline-powered vehicles. It doesn't ban natural gas facilities, but it so heavily subsidizes the alternatives that it greatly discourages these things, and as you say, it distorts the markets.
Have you seen similar dynamics where Washington began spending money or doling taxpayer dollars out to different private entities or special interests, and then once we tried to pull them back, you saw that same dynamic of special interests lobbying Washington to keep their handouts in place?
Well, you see it in the Inflation Reduction Act itself. Many of the tax credits were ones that in some cases began in the 1990s and have been extended many, many times. So there's a long history of these tax credits once they're established, and once there's a concentrated group of companies that benefit from them, they're going to lobby hard to keep them. So yeah, there's a long history of it being difficult to ever phase something out unless you repeal it when the opportunity arises.
Yep. And Democrats love to claim that these subsidies benefit working class Americans. We have IRS data that found that $5.5 billion of the approximately $8.4 billion in tax credit claims doled out for residential energy tax credits came from filers earning more than $100,000 a year annually. I'd love to hear your opinion. Again, do you believe that these tax credits benefit wealthy Americans at the expense of our working class?
The priorities in the Inflation Reduction Act are simply not the priorities of most working Americans. The bottom 60% of households take advantage of 10% of the tax credits. And with regard to something like electric vehicles, keep in mind upwards of 40% of American households are single vehicle households. They either don't want or most likely can't afford multiple vehicles. Ask yourself, does an EV can it really be that one go-to vehicle? And the answer is no. Upwards of 90% of EVs are part of multi-vehicle and wealthier families. And a lot is true of many of these other subsidized appliances and other things that just don't make sense for most working folks, which is why they needed to be subsidized.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. And I now recognize the gentlelady from Arizona, Ms. Ansari. Thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this hearing. I'd like to begin with Ms. Yentl. You've written a lot about anti-racism and white fragility and things like that. Do you believe that President Trump is a racist?
I don't believe that's relevant to this hearing.
Do you believe that he is?
I'm not here to discuss my personal beliefs. I'm here to speak about the important work
You've
that
tweeted that
nonprofits
he's a
do
vile,
across the
despicable
country.
racist. Do you believe that much of his housing policy was racist during his first term?
I'm here to talk about the vital work that nonprofit
So you're not going to
organizations
answer me?
do throughout our
You've
country
tweeted
and
that
in your district.
it's explicitly racist and deeply harmful. Is that right?
I don't have the tweet in front of me.
I've got it right here. You did tweet that. You tweeted that on September 25th, 2020. You said it's explicitly racist and deeply harmful. Do you know who President Trump's Secretary of Housing and Urban Development was during his first term?
Yes,
Who is it? Who was it?
it was Secretary Carson.
Is Ben Carson. Do you believe that Ben Carson is racist or a white supremacist?
With all due respect, sir, I am not here to talk about former HUD secretaries. I'm here to
You-
talk
you
about the
tweeted
essential work
extensively
that
about it.
nonprofits do in your district and throughout the country.
Okay, we can move on then if you won't answer the question. Are you a racist?
With all due respect, sir, I'm here to talk about the essential work that nonprofits
That's
do.
Excuse me, that's a
throughout
very
the
simple
country.
question. Yes or no question. Are you a racist?
I'm not a racist.
You're not a racist. Particularly interesting because according to one of your affiliate charities under your nonprofit umbrella, denial of racism constitutes covert white supremacy. Are you a covert white supremacist?
Sir, I'm here to talk about the essential work that nonprofits
Are you a
do.
covert white supremacist?
Can I talk about the work that nonprofits do in
No,
your
I'm
district?
asking you if you're a
'Cause I think that's
covert
the-
white supremacist, which according to one of your own organizations, again, denial of racism constitutes covert white supremacy. Would you like
I'm
to answer
sorry,
the
what's-
question?
I don't know what the question is.
So you refuse to answer whether you are a covert white supremacist.
I am here to talk about the essential work that nonprofits do. If you'd like to ask me a
I
question
am utterly
about
dumbfounded.
nonprofits
You are on
in your
record right now,
district
and you will
or
not say
throughout
that
the
you are not a
country.
covert white supremacist.
I don't have a definition in front of me. I haven't looked at the definition. I'm not going to answer a question about my personal
That
views.
is-
I'm here to talk about the work
You're
of
not-
nonprofit
I
organizations.
want to give you one more chance to do this. Are you a covert white supremacist?
Why are we so off track from the topic
I'm
of this
asking you.
hearing?
I'm asking you a very straightforward question.
I've heard your question. Thank you, sir.
And you're not going to answer whether you are a covert white supremacist.
I would like to answer questions about the work
This
of
is wow,
nonprofit
this is
organizations.
painful.
Thank you.
That is really, really astounding. I can answer very directly that I am not a covert white supremacist, and I imagine all of my colleagues can as well. I think you ought to reevaluate what you're doing in the nonprofit sector if you can't answer that in a straightforward way. That is astounding. Let me ask you another question. Do you believe that it's appropriate to host and promote LGBTQ plus meetups for 9-year-olds?
I am here to support the vital work of nonprofits, and I will say to oppose the federal government targeting groups.
My question is,
with
do you believe
views
it's
that are
appropriate to
different
host
from
and
its
promote
own?
LGBTQ plus meetups for 9-year-olds?
I believe that
Because
the
one of
federal
your
government
affiliate
should not
nonprofits
target
does do that.
organizations that have views different from its own. That is wrong, whatever party is in control, whatever administration
I
is
think
in control.
I think a
to
lot of this
use
is wrong.
federal
Do you think
power.
that it's appropriate for young children to use gender transition paraphernalia? Because one of your
no
not
idea
affiliated nonprofit organizations gives bras, binders, breast forms, nipples. I'm not even going to repeat this because it's so
Point of order,
disgusting
Madam
for
Chair. The
children of all
gentleman is
ages.
breaching decorum and attacking the witness. Can we please
I'm
move on
not
to
attacking
something
the witness. I'm
relevant
simply
to the
asking a
actual
straightforward
issue at
question.
hand, sir?
Mr. Gill, I'll be extending your time. You've been interrupted.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you believe that art exploration camps for transgender and gender diverse youth of the age of 11 is normal?
We support the vital work of nonprofit organizations and oppose the federal government opposing
So you
and targeting
refuse to answer any of
organizations
these
with
questions.
views
You
different
refuse to
than their
even
own.
answer the question of whether you are a covert white supremacist.
I'm not here to answer questions about my personal views or my personal
Is that because you don't want to disclose whether you're a covert white supremacist?
I'm here to talk about the essential
I'm
work
giving
that
you a chance
nonprofits
to
do.
tell the world that you are not a covert white supremacist.
Thank
Will
you
you
for the
do
chance.
that?
I'll pass on your chance.
You'll pass on
Thank
that.
you, sir.
That is astounding. That is really astounding. You're a radical far left activist, and you're masquerading as somebody promoting nonprofit, nonpartisan institutions, and you will not even tell this committee that you are not a covert white supremacist. That's astounding. I yield my time back.
The gentleman yields.
We next go to the distinguished gentleman from Denton, Texas. The gentleman, Mr. Gill, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. And I'd like to also say thank you to the witnesses for taking the time and coming here. Mr. Bagdoy, I'll start with you. A recent report by the GAO found that for fiscal years 2017 through 2024, DoD reported about $10.8 billion in confirmed fraud. The report went on to say, quote, "The full extent of fraud affecting DoD is not known, but but is potentially significant. Do you have a monetary estimate of the fraud that takes place annually within the DoD, perhaps beyond that number?
I do not. And actually, the figure you quoted is for all fraud around DoD, not just procurement. The recovered amount that is about $7 billion over a number of years is for procurement. So those are two different sets of numbers. Plus, for the confirmed fraud, we did notice, and I believe the IG may have flagged this as well, that DoD reported the same figure, $2.4 billion, for 2 consecutive fiscal years. So that raises some questions about the reliability of what's been reported. I believe in the past, the OIG has questioned the process of arriving at those types of numbers. So I would urge some caution in using those numbers, but they do represent what is basically known through adjudication. So they have to be detected first, investigated, then adjudicated. So we have no idea what is being missed.
If you were to guess, would you guess that total fraud at the DoD is higher than that number?
I would suspect it is, yes.
And how many open recommendations issued by the GAO are there that would improve financial management within the DoD?
For financial management, I will have to get back to you on fraud risk management based on the 3 reports that I've been responsible over the last 6 years or so. We still have 13 open recommendations. We are expecting responses from DoD, as I mentioned before, throughout June and into next month. We just sent over the list of priority recommendations to the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Hegseth, for his personal attention. And so that letter will be made public early next week.
Got it.
So
but either way, it's a substantial number.
it is a substantial number. The risks are immediate, so delaying implementation exacerbates that risk.
Why do you think they have delayed implementation, and how long should it take for the DoD to implement some of the recommendations that have been given to them?
Yeah. To be fair, it does take time to do this and to do it right. But we have encountered pretty significant delays, I think, over time that may reflect lack of attention, lack of urgency, lack of priority. That is speculative on my part, but it is consistent with what we've encountered with other agencies.
Got it. Thank you. And Mr. Mayo, a couple questions for you. The DoD Inspector General has identified 17 scope-limiting weaknesses that are significant roadblocks to the DoD's clean audit opinion goal. What steps do you think the DoD can take or needs to take to obtain a clean audit by 2028?
Sir, that's a great question and really outside my my expertise. I would submit I can go back to the audit component and get some data for you and get back to you on that.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. I'd like to, if I can, answer one of the questions that the distinguished gentleman asked, because we have 2 witnesses who are trying to professionally represent not only themselves but the department's GAO and the IGs. The bottom line is that there's plenty of documentation that shows that DoD, at least over a period of several years, said it's not a problem. The things you bring to us is not a problem. We're not going to even take this conversation further. And so that is the conversation that both of these gentlemen are operating under. And the hope is now with a new administration, a new secretary, that there will be an emphasis not only on attempting to do something, but be willing to opening up their eyes to the recommendations that have come from professional groups like GAO and inspector generals. And so it's not a matter of them wanting to do or not do. They deny its existence. And this is the part why both these gentlemen literally came out of their chairs yesterday in my office when we pulsed this issue. And so I want you to know that your line of questioning is most instructive. They also were trying to be very polite back to you. So that's on in defense of these young men. Thank you very much. Gentleman yields back his time.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, China has state-sponsored media. North Korea has state-sponsored media. The United States does not need taxpayer-funded propaganda. Mr. Speaker, we have the opportunity this week to rescind $1 billion that is in the pipeline right now for NPR and PBS, two outlets that routinely spew anti-American and anti-Christian propaganda. They sow racial division in this country, and they promote weird, woke values that most Americans find disgusting. Mr. Speaker, this is something that we have talked about for a long time, and finally we have a president who is serious about rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government, and this is the perfect place to start. Let's pass this rescission bill, let's end taxpayer-funded propaganda, and let's take our country back. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
Gill from Texas. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for holding this hearing on a very important topic, which is data privacy. But I've got a couple other things that I want to talk about while we're here related to this. Miss Wojcinski, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, Wojcicki.
Wojcicki, okay. Thank you for being here and taking the time. 23andMe has really, over the past few years, gone out of its way to show how woke it is. And one of the things that it's been promoting, amongst many others, is a variety of different pronouns. Here's a tweet that you guys put out in June of 2021. I just want to ask you, what does E mean as a pronoun? It's E.
To be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you know what M means as a pronoun?
I'm also not sure.
Okay. Don't you think it's important to know what these mean? You guys are, in this post, you wrote, or somebody on your comms team wrote that using the correct pronouns impacts trans people's health, can reduce the risk of depression and suicide. That's a pretty serious claim. It seems like if you're going to demand people use these pronouns, you would know what they mean, right?
I delegate. 23andMe had a lot of people. We had 600, 700
You were
people.
CEO though, right?
I was CEO, but it doesn't
Okay.
mean I can oversee every single post.
Well, this is a very, very politically charged post that you guys put out. I would think that you would have a view on that. Can you tell us what is the difference between Z and Z? One of them is ZE and one is XE.
I'm not up to speed on that.
Okay. Does it concern you that not understanding this might increase the risk of depression and suicide amongst trans people?
I support my research team that felt that it's important for us to be inclusive of everybody, and it was very much grounded.
I agree, but it doesn't seem very inclusive if you don't know what they mean, right?
I respect the social team and the research team that put that post together.
But you don't know what any of these pronouns mean, but you guys are promoting it.
I assume it's different ways people like to be referred to.
What about here, HIR? What does that mean?
I don't know either.
What about fair, FAEFAER?
Again,
You'd agree these are pretty unusual things, wouldn't you?
I think they represent a lot of the diversity in this country.
Okay, well, I'm trying to understand the diversity, and I'm asking you what they mean. I'll give you one more chance. Do you know what Z here, Z, Zim, fair, EM mean?
I do not.
Okay. Does that concern you that you don't know it? According to your own post here, understanding these and using the correct pronouns would improve your product for trans and non-binary people. It seems like this is directly related to the product.
Again, it was the team, the social team and the research team that felt strongly around putting.
Well, you were CEO, so you can't pawn off responsibility to somebody else here. What about bathroom access? On 23andMe's website, I've got it up here on my phone. There's a 23andMe blog, and there's a little subheading about bathroom access. Is it still 23andMe's official position that men should be using women's restrooms?
I'm not at 23andMe anymore.
Okay. Was it while you were at 23andMe?
I think we had non-gendered bathrooms as well.
Well, that's not what this is referring to. This is referring to laws that seek to force, in your own words, force trans individuals to use a restroom that does not correspond to their gender identity. Is it, while you were there, was it 23andMe's position that men should be using women's restrooms?
I think our position was just to make sure that we're applicable to laws.
That this isn't in reference. This is actually against laws that would stop people from using the wrong restroom.
Yeah,
so this is actually against laws.
I haven't seen, I don't have that post in front of me, so I can't comment specifically.
Was it 23andMe's position while you were there that children should be transed? Because that's on this website as well.
I don't know specifically what you're referring to.
I can read you a little bit about it. Supports gender-affirming healthcare such as hormones in surgery for trans youth.
I think 23andMe referred specifically some of the pediatric guidelines.
Sounds to me like you took a genetics company, which you built, and congratulations for doing that, and turned it into a woke social justice organization. You want to run away from that now. Doesn't sound like you even knew what you were talking about at the time. You don't know what any of these pronouns mean. And now realize that this is politically not very popular. Says a lot about where your convictions were and what you meant here. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now recognizes Mr. Gill from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Pritzker, do you know how much illegal immigration costs your state each year?
No, sir, I do not.
Costs over $780 per family per year. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And may I ask, what do you mean by the cost?
That is a lot of money.
The
for
cost
the
of
cost
illegal
your state.
immigration.
Let me ask you, do you know who Franklin Jose Pena Ramos is?
Are you talking about the federal government's
I'm
cost to
asking
the
you if
state
you
of
know who
Illinois as a
Franklin
result of the
Jose
failed
Pena Ramos is.
immigration policy?
It's a yes or no question. I'll take that as a no. Do you know who Jose Martinez Rangel is?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't. You should. Those are two men who came into this country illegally, raped and murdered 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary in my home state of Texas. Do you think that elected officials should have welcomed them into our communities?
Sir,
question.
Before they committed a crime, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Do you think that they should have been welcomed into our communities? That's a very straightforward question.
Someone who commits murder, no. Someone who commits murder should be
Why
apprehended.
did you state during Biden's border crisis that illegal aliens, quote, should have been welcomed and helped by elected officials?
When you say illegal
I'm
aliens,
asking
these
you,
are
should
people
these
who are
people have been
given
welcomed and
asylum.
helped into our communities?
People who are
That's an
asylum
easy
seekers.
yes or no question.
Well, you're mischaracterizing them.
It is your position that they should have been welcomed into our communities. Is that correct?
There were
That's
asylum
from
seekers
your
who were
own
here
statement.
legally.
And
There
then
were
they went
asylum
on and
seekers.
murdered and raped 12-year-old Jocelyn.
Someone who
Nungary.
commits murder should be held accountable. We do that in the state.
And
of
you think
Illinois.
they should have been welcomed into our communities before they did?
I don't know how you can tell before somebody commits a crime
You can
that they are
secure
going
the
to
border
commit the
and
crime.
not let illegal aliens come into our communities. Do you support abolishing ICE?
Asylum seekers.
Do you support abolishing ICE?
No, I believe we need an immigration force in the United States.
You
In
don't.
fact,
You believe a budget is a moral document. Is that correct?
I do.
You do. You tweeted that. Your administration gave $12,000 to the Organized Communities Against Deportations, which just this past month was marching in the streets of Chicago with signs saying abolish ICE. Do you support this?
I do not
Is this a
support
reflection of
abolishing
your
an
moral
immigration
values?
force.
Is this a reflection of your moral values?
I do not support abolishing an immigration force.
That's good to hear. Mr. Governor, do you think that biological men should be able to use women's restrooms?
I'm not sure how this has to do with immigration.
It's
sir.
just a yes or no question.
Why are you
It's very easy to
politicizing
answer.
this?
Do you
I
think
thought
that
we were
men
here
should be using
doing
women's
fact
restrooms?
finding. I'm sorry?
Do you think men should be allowed in women's restrooms?
I'm not sure why this has come to this issue.
You
It has
tweeted
nothing
that
to do
as
with
a
immigration.
protest against President Trump, everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today. Have you ever used the women's restroom?
Not that I can recall ever, sir. No.
You wanted everybody else to do it, but you didn't?
Sir, I'm not sure why we're on a topic that has
I'm
nothing to
asking
do
you,
with
you're
today's hearing.
advocating for men to use women's restrooms, but you didn't do it?
I do not advocate that, no.
Well, actually, you did. You said everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today.
I can tell you that you are
Do you regret
politicizing
saying
this
this?
in a way that what we ought to be focusing on is
Do you
the
regret
failure of the federal
encouraging men to
government
use women's restrooms?
and the Congress to deal with immigration reform.
Do you regret encouraging men to use women's restrooms?
Again, you're taking us on topics that have
Did you ever
nothing to
consider
do
that
with
women don't
the
want you in
subject
their,
that you
in their
invited us here
bathrooms?
for? So you're admitting that this is just a political circus.
No,
Is
I'm
that what you're doing?
asking you
This
because
is
you put
nothing
this
to do
on
with
the
immigration
internet for everybody
and
to
really
see.
about you grandstanding.
I'm asking you, have you ever considered that women don't want you in their bathrooms? That's a private space that they don't want you or any other man in.
Congressman, let's talk about
You
your
can't say that
failure to
normal
vote
people can
for
say that
Medicaid.
they
In
don't,
fact, you want to
that
take
they don't
Medicaid
think
away.
men should be in
and
women's
SNAP
restrooms.
And
That's a
veteran
very
services.
straightforward question.
You apparently want people
And you're
to
encouraging
die
men to
in the
use
United
women's
States
restrooms
because you
where there
want to
could be
take healthcare
underage
away.
girls. Do you think that's appropriate?
Sir, if we're going to
Do you think that's
politicize
normal?
this, let's talk about what you're doing to people
Do
in
you
this
think that
country
that's normal?
by virtue of your votes.
All right, let's move on.
with
Let's
President
ask,
Trump.
do you support Hamas's agenda?
Sir, I do not. They are a terrorist organization.
Your administration gave a grant to the Muslim Civic Coalition, which just 2 weeks after October 7th was marching in the streets of Chicago to, quote, stop the U.S.-backed genocide against Gaza. Is that a reflection of your values?
I have spent my life fighting anti-Semitism.
No, I'm asking, is this a reflection of your values?
I'm not sure why you're attacking
Because
me
your
about something in an
administration
organization.
gave money to this organization.
I'm explaining to you that what we do in the state of Illinois is stand up for what we believe are
You didn't
our
have to
rights
give
and
money to
freedoms.
the Muslim Civic Coalition
People
to
have
march
the
and
right
call,
to express themselves.
to
That-
stop the
we don't-
U.S.-backed genocide against Gaza. That was your choice.
I know
that was your
Republicans want to
administration.
take away people's right to free speech. We don't in the state of Illinois, and I
They've
do
got
not
the
believe
right to
that
free
is
speech.
proper.
They don't have the right to tax dollars, and you gave them to them.
You want to take those rights away from people. I understand.
Gentlemen, time's expired. Chair recognizes Ms. Brown from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Trump administration isn't serious about public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If Fox News or Talk Radio or any other conservative media outlet came to me and asked us if we should provide them with taxpayer-funded handouts, I would say no, and I believe that most of my colleagues would as well. I certainly think that far-left propaganda outlets like NPR should be defunded. Remember, this is an outlet that believes writing articles about fat phobia and queer animals constitute serious journalism. They have the right to say whatever they want to, but they do not have the right to our tax dollars. And to my colleagues who say that this is only a small part of our budget, I would ask them, what outside of border security and national defense would they like to cut from our budget? They've never seen a foreign country they don't want to shower with our tax dollars or an illegal alien that they don't want to give welfare to. This is a logical first step to get our finances under control, and I urge my colleagues to vote for this rescissions bill. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gill.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to Democrats trying to give voting rights to illegal aliens. Mr. Speaker, once again, Democrats are taking the 20% side on another 80-20 issue. The American people do not want illegal aliens voting. They shouldn't be here to begin with. They have no claim on our resources, and they certainly should not be influencing our political system in any respect. Mr. Speaker, every single one of them needs to be deported, and thankfully we have a president who is actually doing that. Mr. Speaker, for so long, Democrats have called conservatives conspiracy theorists. They've slandered us for saying that the Democrat playbook, which they themselves have articulated, is to open up our borders to ultimately provide amnesty, a path to citizenship, and voting rights to illegal aliens. And Mr. Speaker, they are doing that right now. That's exactly what they're doing, and they're fighting for it. Allowing illegal aliens to vote is not only grotesquely unjust, but it waters down the meaning of citizenship for American citizens who are here. Mr. Speaker, our government should represent our people, American citizens. Illegal aliens have no right to vote. They shouldn't be voting, and they need to be deported. With that said, I yield back. Thank you.
I think I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
You're recognized.
Well, once again, my Republican colleagues want to deflect on this issue, focus in on undocumented immigrants. Undocumented immigrants are unlikely to vote in local D.C. elections. Again, why? Because the D.C. voter roll is public record. Undocumented immigrants are not going to want to identify themselves, including their address, where they live. Non-citizen voting, again, this is consistent. A lot of jurisdictions across the entire country. We talked about 20 municipalities. Do this to allow universal adult suffrage, the ability for people to take part in local elections. The other thing, real quick, that one of my Republican colleagues brought up is the purpose of this bill is, quote, we want to stop the diluting the voices of American citizens. Diluting the voices of American citizens. What's really diluting the voices of American citizens are voter suppression laws, like we see in the South, like we see in Florida, where I'm from. Poll taxes, voter roll purges, voter intimidation. That is what's diluting the voices of American citizens. I haven't heard a single Republican in this debate talk about ensuring that citizens that live in D.C. can have full representation in Congress. Where's that? I bring it up again. Every issue, Republicans want to talk about protecting us by taking away stuff from other people and never want to talk about giving citizens what we deserve. And the citizens of D.C. deserve to have full representation in the United States Congress. I reserve.
The chair recognizes Mr. Gill from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Pritzker, do you know how much illegal immigration costs your state each year?
No, sir, I do not.
Costs over $780 per family per year. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And may I ask, what do you mean by the cost?
That is a lot of money.
The
for
cost of illegal
your state.
immigration.
Let me ask you, do you know who Franklin Jose Pena Ramos is?
Are you talking about the federal government's cost to the state of Illinois as a result of the failed
Ramos is?
Immigration policy?
It's a yes or no question. I'll take that as a no. Do you know who Jose Martinez Rangel is?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't. You should. Those are two men who came into this country illegally, raped and murdered 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary in my home state of Texas. Do you think that elected officials should have welcomed them into our communities?
Sir, before they committed a crime, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Do you think that they should have been welcomed into our communities? That's a very straightforward question.
Someone who commits murder, no. Someone who commits murder should be apprehended.
Why did you state during Biden's border crisis that illegal aliens, quote, should have been welcomed and helped by elected officials?
When you say illegal
I'm
aliens,
asking
these
you,
are people who are
have been
given
welcomed
asylum.
and helped into our communities.
People who are
That's an
asylum
easy
seekers.
yes or no question.
Well, you're mischaracterizing them.
It is your position that they should have been welcomed into our communities. Is that correct?
There were asylum
That's from
seekers
your
who were
own
here
statement.
legally.
And
There
then
were
they
asylum
went on and
seekers.
murdered and raped 12-year-old Jocelyn.
Someone who
Nungary.
commits murder should be held accountable. We do that in the state.
And
of
you think
Illinois.
they should have been welcomed into our communities before they did?
I don't know how you can tell before somebody commits a crime
You can
that they are
secure
going
the
to
border
commit the
and
crime.
not let illegal aliens come into our communities. Do you support abolishing ICE?
Asylum seekers.
Do you support abolishing ICE?
No, I believe we need an immigration force in the United States.
You
In
don't.
fact,
You believe a budget is a moral document. Is that correct?
I do.
You do. You tweeted that. Your administration gave $12,000 to the Organized Communities Against Deportations, which just this past month was marching in the streets of Chicago with signs saying abolish ICE. Do you support this?
I do not
Is this a
support
reflection of
abolishing
your
an
moral
immigration
values?
force.
Is this a reflection of your moral values?
I do not support abolishing an immigration force.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Madam Chair. It never gets boring in here. And I'd like to say thank you to the witnesses for being here and for taking the time. Ms. DeVito, thank you for coming here. In your testimony, you said that Americans deserve a government that works for them, a government that makes their lives easier and more secure. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Great. I'd like to read through a couple of the grants that Doge has pulled back, and I'd like to get your take on them. They pulled back a $1.5 million NIH grant to Morehouse College. It was called the Center to Advance Reproductive Justice and Behavioral Health among Black, pregnant / postpartum women and birthing people. Do you think that that makes Americans' lives easier and more secure?
I think that medical and scientific research of all types.
Do you think that that constitutes critical research? According to your testimony, NIH grants are critical research?
I think that government research of all types in the medical. and
Including
public-
birthing people?
I think bench research of all types plays a fundamental
What is a
role.
birthing person?
Sir, I am here to talk about the Doge impact.
Well, I'm
for
asking
working
you about this
families.
grant and you're defending it. So I'm asking you, who is birthing people?
I am not familiar with this grant.
Mm-hmm.
I take a position that all kinds of government research, medical, pharmaceutical,
Is a birthing person a woman? Is that another
biological-
word for female?
That is outside the scope of my expertise.
Seems like erasure language to me. I've been told that that type of vernacular constitutes erasure language. How about another one? How about the conference, Gender Equity in the Mathematical Study of Commutative Algebra? Do you think that that's a valid form of government spending?
I think mathematical research of all types is deserving of government.
What about
investment.
studying, and this is directly from the National Science Foundation's website, women and non-binary mathematicians?
Again, I think all kinds of government investment should be dedicated toward mathematical.
All kinds of government investment.
scientific-
You don't have any kind of limit on what we're spending our money on? Just everything? Is that your testimony?
I am talking about Doge. You brought up a
So am
grant.
I. This is a grant that Doge cut.
I am not familiar with this particular grant, but
Mhm.
I think government investment in mathematical,
Okay.
biological.
Let's do another one. This one is called hashtag Transcendent Health, adapting an LGB plus inclusive teen pregnancy prevention program for transgender boys. I can't even say this without laughing. Do you think that that is a useful form of our tax spend?
I am not familiar with that grant, but I think bench research, government investment in scientific and
Teen
pharmaceutical
pregnancy
research.
for transgender boys. Do you think that that is a useful spend of our tax dollars?
I think government investment in all kinds of scientific research is of the utmost importance.
Including pregnancy prevention for transgender boys. Okay. Let me ask you, we can come back to this later maybe. Do you support abolishing the filibuster still?
I am here to talk about Doge respectfully.
Right.
and
We could abolish the filibuster and get a lot of Doge cuts through. And you've written at length on your Twitter about abolishing the filibuster. I'm just curious if you think that we should do that still.
I did a lot of previous work on different topics because
Mhm.
I am an economic policy expert, and respectfully, I'm here to talk about Doge cuts.
Okay, but we could abolish the filibuster and get Doge cuts. This is totally germane here. Do you think we should?
I am here to talk about Doge cuts, not strategies for achieving more of them, but the harms that they have produced for working families.
That's a convenient change of opinion. I noticed that most of your comments about the filibuster were during the Biden administration. But we can move on. Let's go back to some more of these grants. Do you think that we should be spending money on, quote, the racialized basis of trait judgments from faces?
I am not at all familiar with that grant.
It's a $500,000 NSF grant.
Okay, I am not familiar with the subject matter or the
But
particular
you're
grant.
defending these.
I am saying that I think the government
You're pretty
has-
adamant against Doge cuts, and I'm asking you if you support the cuts
I think that there
Doge
is
has found.
economic and medical, public health, communal benefit to
What
the
about
government
cross-sex
investing
steroid therapy and cardiovascular risk in the transgender female?
again, I think government investment in scientific research is
Great.
important.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it.
The gentleman's time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for holding this hearing. I agree wherever anti-Semitism is found, we should denounce it vehemently. This is a huge issue that has come up, particularly in the past few years. I think anti-Semitism is rooted not just in an ancient bigotry against the Jewish people, but oftentimes in a movement that seeks to fundamentally unwind civilization, particularly Western civilization. Of course, our Western civilization that we enjoy is rooted in Judeo-Christian values, the very cultural foundations that we as conservatives seek to conserve. But unfortunately, we find too often that there are organizations, particularly and oftentimes on the left, that are vehemently anti-Semitic. We've seen for years the BDS movement grow in the United States, a movement that refers to Israel as an apartheid state, refers to their supposed genocide, calls them a settler colonialist state, refers to them as supremacist. We've seen the rise in the Students for Justice in Palestine movement, a movement linked to Hamas that openly, across college campuses after October 7th, praised Hamas and defended them, making college campuses oftentimes completely inhospitable for Jewish students, shut them down oftentimes. And then we have Code Pink. We saw some of their members in this room earlier today, a group that is connected to the CCP that is ostensibly anti-war, and yet right after October 7th, the day after October 7th, put out a statement not condemning the genocide of Jews, but supporting the Palestinian movement, saying, quote, "Resistance is a human right. The human reaction to being oppressed is to resist, and Palestinians deserve that right just as much as everyone else on the planet." They went on to say Palestinians are confronting the world with their truth, and it is one that should be supported and respected. That was the day after October 7th. And then we have members of Congress comparing Jews to termites, saying that Israel has hypnotized the world and calling it evil. And then, of course, shouting the slogan, "From the river to the sea." There's a leading mayoral candidate in New York right now, who refuses to condemn the phrase, "globalize the intifada." That is sickening that this is in our political system. I, again, want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. Mr. Nosenchuk, thank you for being here and for the work against anti-Semitism that you do. Do you believe that the slogan, "From the river to the sea," is anti-Semitic?
So terms have different meanings. Terms have different meanings to different people, but it's clear that some language has now fueled violent attacks on Jews, and those terms must be understood through that lens.
Well, do you believe that phrase is anti-Semitic, though? I agree we should disagree with the substance of it.
I think it depends on the way in which the terms are used. Many Jews hear that as anti-Semitic, and in that vein, people who say it need to understand that is how it is experienced. And in assessing, from a civil rights perspective, whether there has been anti-Semitism, we look to bias motivation, and certainly language like that can be probative of anti-Semitic bias.
It seems to me a phrase that excludes the existence of the Jewish state would be pretty clearly anti-Semitic. Do you believe that the phrase "globalize the intifada" is anti-Semitic?
When I hear the phrase "globalize the intifada" today, in light of the shooting that occurred at the Capitol Jewish Museum, in light of what happened at Boulder, in light of what happened at Governor Shapiro's house, there is no question that I experience that as being incredibly problematic
Problematic, yes, I agree. Do you believe that it's anti-Semitic? And are you willing to condemn that phrase?
I condemn the use of that phrase, yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. I want to thank you all for.
Thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you to all of the witnesses for taking the time to be here. We certainly really appreciate it. Dr. Harper, I've got a couple questions for you. Just starting out, do you believe that ageism is a form of bigotry?
Yes.
You do? Yeah, I thought so because you wrote an article saying that ageism in media discourse about Biden's reelection is an issue. Do you still believe that ageism was an issue in the past election cycle?
I believe that ageism in any form and in any context is a problem.
Do you believe that Americans who were concerned about Joe Biden's age were bigoted?
I did not say that in my article, nor do I claim that now.
You said that ageism is a form of bigotry.
Ageism is a form of bigotry, but I did not say that in my article. You cannot misrepresent my ideas.
Okay, well, why don't you provide your explanation for that? Ageism is a form of bigotry. People who were concerned about Joe Biden's age were ageist. How do you square that?
I'm less concerned about Joe Biden's age. I am more concerned about young people and older Americans being systematically denied opportunities and access because of their age.
Do you think that Joe Biden's age had a relation to his cognitive decline?
That is outside of my area of expertise.
Do you need to be an expert to determine whether an 82-year-old man who is clearly visibly declining mentally on camera, if that has anything to do with his age?
I'm not a cognitive scientist.
You're not? Okay. Of course you're not. Do you think those Americans were right to be concerned about Joe Biden's age?
Again, you're missing the point. The point is about the ageism itself.
Okay.
It isn't about Joe Biden.
We're going to move on. Do you believe that America should be a colorblind society? For instance, should people be treated differently based on their race? It's just a yes or no question.
It's not a yes or no question.
It's a yes or no question.
It is as I said in the beginning of my testimony, America
yes or
has
no
not done right by indigenous peoples, by black people, by Asian American and Pacific Islander people.
Should people be treated differently based on their race? Yes or no?
People should receive the services and the support and the remedies that are
your answer
owed to
is
them.
That they should be treated differently based on their race.
They should receive the remedies that are owed to them because of the systemic racism and injustice.
Do you believe that race should be considered in employer hiring practices?
I do not believe that white people are the only qualified people for jobs.
I didn't say that. Nobody said that. I asked you if race should be considered in employer hiring practices. And you're not going to intimidate me by slandering me as a racist.
You're also, I did not call you a racist.
No,
you're not going to intimidate me by insisting that I called you a racist.
Straightforward question. It's a yes or no question. Should race be considered in employer hiring practices? Yes or no?
I believe that diversity ought to be considered as companies and other organizations attempt to reflect their customers, our country.
I'll take that as a yes. Which race do you think should be preferred?
I do not think that a single race should be preferred.
You just said that you believe that race should be considered in employer hiring practices.
I don't know. There's going to be a transcript of this hearing. I didn't say that in that way.
Okay. Why don't you explain what you believe?
What I said and what I believe is that the demographic composition of workplaces, our nation's military, and so on, our Congress ought to reflect the diversity of the United States of America.
Racial demographic composition. Racial demographic. Is that what you're saying?
Racial, gender.
Okay, so race should be a factor in employer hiring practices. Yeah, that's what you're saying, is it not?
Organizations ought to attempt to match the diversity of their...
You're hopping around the question.
No,
you don't want to
I am answering quite straightforwardly, as a matter of fact.
Who gets to determine which races are preferred?
I already told you I don't have a single racial group.
You just told me that you believe that the racial demographic makeup should be taken into account in hiring practices.
And it should be reflected in all levels of companies and other organizations.
Okay, let's talk about college admissions.
if two different children are applying for college, let's say one is white and one is black, and there's one slot available, should they be evaluated based on the same objective criteria? Test scores, for instance.
Are you familiar with holistic admissions?
Should they be held to the same standards regarding test scores?
I am a proponent of holistic admissions.
It's just a yes or no question.
Yeah, no, I can't answer that question for you as a proponent of holistic admissions.
Got it. I'll take that as a no. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Brown. We appreciate that. Now we're going to move on to 5 minutes of questioning, and I'll begin by recognizing myself. You know, for decades, the United States has had an existential problem with illegal immigration. This isn't something that's new. It wasn't something that was created under the Biden administration. We've had it for a long time. And Republicans in Congress and in the rest of the country outside of Washington, D.C., demanded border security, that Washington would actually do what we said we would do on the campaign trail and secure the border and stop the flow of illegal immigration. And what would happen in Washington is that Republicans would ask for border security. We would ask for a wall. We would ask for things that we can fund that would stem this tide of illegal immigration. And in response from the other side of the aisle, we would hear demands for amnesty, a pathway to citizenship for people who have no business being here to begin with, who came here illegally. And the result was that nothing was done to secure the border. One of the things that I'm most excited about the big, beautiful bill that we are working on and are going to get passed next week is that finally we can fund border security and mass deportations that the American people demand without having to negotiate on amnesty. In other words, the American people get what they would like. Republicans get all of our priorities. We get a border wall, we get river barriers, we get 10,000 new ICE agents. And we don't have to deal with demands for mass amnesty. That is a huge win, not only for conservatives, but for all Americans. And I'm excited about getting that done. I believe that mass migration is the single biggest existential threat to our country today. And we're going to begin by fixing that. So thank you to the witnesses for being here. Mrs. Vaughn, I'd like to start with you. I really appreciate your time here. Some claim that in order to finally secure the border for good, we need to make a deal on amnesty or to expand our already extraordinarily generous legal immigration system or work visa programs. Does this viewpoint put the interests of the American people first?
Absolutely not. The biggest problem, well, first of all, we've tried this in the past and it never worked. It was always amnesty now, enforcement if we get around to it. And so this doesn't work. But what we do know also from experience is that every time amnesty is raised, it destroys all incentive people have to voluntarily comply with immigration laws and go home on their own if they don't have a path to legal status. It creates incentives for people to stay here illegally and incentives for people to start trying to cross the border illegally as well. We should not be discussing, contemplating an amnesty of any kind until there is integrity and enforcement of the immigration laws that we have. That's just not something that should be on the table now.
Have the American people ever been promised border security in exchange for amnesty in the past?
Oh, repeatedly, most notably in 1986, when the amnesty happened immediately, was given to more people than we were told would be qualifying for it, and the enforcement promises were never applied, never materialized. And it's been promised in a number of other types of legislation in 2013, in 2007. It's always the same thing. Amnesty now, we'll promise to give you enforcement later.
Whenever amnesty is brought up in the national conversation, have you found that it leads to increased illegal immigration?
That is definitely what happened in 2012 before the so-called Gang of Eight bill. And during that discussion, and it has happened in the past as well. In fact, well, look at what happened before the Biden administration took office. They had promised amnesty during the campaign, and the illegal crossings and encounters at the border went up even before Biden took office in January. They were up substantially in December, the month before that.
Yep. And then I'd like to ask you about our green card system. Approximately how many immigrants are approved for permanent residency each year?
It's about 1 million per year.
About 1 million. And how many of those are via chain migration?
About 60%.
60%. Awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Vaughn. Appreciate it. And now I'd like to recognize the ranking member, Ms. Jayapal, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maintaining a healthy, robust...
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gill.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight is the culmination of months of work from House Republicans to defund left-wing state-sponsored media outlets like NPR. And during that process, we got to bring in leadership from these outlets, like the CEO of NPR, Catherine Marr, to testify before the House Oversight Committee. I got to ask her about a lot of her past public statements. It turns out she has a prolific Twitter history. She's written extensively about every single major woke buzzword that you could think of, including, quote, the ravages of late-stage capitalism, structural privilege, her own cis-white mobility privilege. Mr. Speaker, most Americans, including myself, didn't know what that meant until reading this. The politics of representation and, of course, toxic masculinity. She also wrote about herself, about one of her major pet peeves, which is whenever she goes on an airplane and finds out that the demographics are, quote, usually greater than 80% male, usually white. Mr. Speaker, that is flagrantly racist. She's written about how, quote, I do wish Hillary, meaning Hillary Clinton, wouldn't use the language of boy and girl. It's erasing language for non-binary people. Mr. Speaker, this is the person running the outlet the other side of the aisle wants our tax dollars to subsidize. And of course, she's written extensively about race, about how America is addicted to white supremacy, how she grew up feeling superior because she is white, how America begins in black plunder and white democracy. Mr. Speaker, this is directly from her own Twitter account. Mr. Speaker, nonpartisan news outlets are not run by lunatics like this. And Republicans are done using the power that voters give us to fund Democrat media machines. We're playing to win now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady from North Carolina reserves.
It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague from the state of Texas, Representative Brandon Gill.
Thank you, Laurel, and thank you all for being here. It was just a year ago yesterday that President Trump was in a rural Pennsylvania field, bucolic area, beautiful part of this country, when a deranged gunman tried to murder him. At the time, there were thousands of his supporters in the field looking for a message of hope from the president. A message that the forgotten Americans in this country will no longer be forgotten, that the people who have been ravaged by globalism and mass migration and fentanyl will have a champion in Washington. And meanwhile, leftists on the other side of the aisle were slandering that same then presidential candidate, saying that he is a threat to democracy, that he's a wannabe dictator, that he is literally Hitler, in their words. And some people on their side of the aisle take those words at face value, and they tried to assassinate him. Political violence has absolutely no place in this country, but unfortunately, this kind of rhetoric has continued. We hear our colleagues on the other side of the aisle demonizing the brave men and women who serve in ICE and in immigration facilities, saying that what they are doing is similar to the secret police, that they are being compared to the Gestapo. This is rhetoric that is not only deranged and wrong, but it has no place in a functioning democratic system. So we on this side of the aisle, and we hope that others will join us, reject this rhetoric. We reject political violence in all its forms. And we pray for this country and for its leaders and for our president, for their safety and for their well-being. So with that said, thank you all for being here, and I'd like to...
Ranking member yields back. And with that, I believe that Mr. Schmidt, you're going to yield your time. Is that correct? Okay, so Mr. Schmidt is going to yield his time to Mr. Kiley, who's not going to speak quite yet because Mr. Gill is in front of you, but I wanted to make that note. Okay, thank you, Mr. Schmidt. With that, Mr. Gill is next in line from the great state of Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for putting this hearing together here and helping us continue to identify waste, fraud, and abuse that we can cut out of our federal budget, particularly abuse that is pushing left-wing pet projects. But before I jump into that, I'd like to address something that one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle mentioned earlier about gender equity. I find it particularly amusing that the party who doesn't know how many genders there are to begin with has the gall to lecture us about gender equity. But if we want to talk about gender equity, let's talk about it. Which party believes that men should be using women's bathrooms? It's not this side of the aisle, it's the Democrat Party. Which party believes that men should be playing in women's sports? It's not this side of the aisle, it's the Democrat Party. Which party believes that our tax dollars should fund transgender surgeries for minors? It's not this side of the aisle, it's that side of the aisle. And those are things that they don't like to talk about because they know how wildly unpopular they are with the American people. But that is the reality, and that's what we are up against right now, is a Democrat Party that is pushing some of the most wild and perverse social programs on the American people. But with that said, I'd like to jump into the point of this hearing, which is not gender equity. It's to talk about other left-wing projects. And Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time. During President Biden's tenure, USAID under Samantha Powers took a particular interest in Hungary. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Congressman.
Would you say that USAID's involvement in that country, including funding media organizations, was nonpartisan, or do you think that was used to push a particular agenda?
Oh, it was meant to do regime change in a NATO ally, and a very key NATO ally. That was unconscionable.
Would you say that Hungary is an important NATO ally in Central and Eastern Europe?
Yes, it borders Ukraine. I believe, yes, it borders Serbia as well. Yeah, this is not, this was something, we should never be doing this in friendly countries to begin with. Mm-hmm. The fact that Samantha Powers did this and met with leaders of the opposition before she met with government ministers whom she scolded. And our ambassador, well, I don't want to go into it because I know you have more questions, but.
Well, that's where I'm going with this. Why do you think that the Biden administration was so interested in using our tax dollars to funnel monetary support for domestic political opposition in an allied nation in order to harm a democratically elected government?
Well, for the same reason it did it in Guatemala and Macedonia with equally pro-U.S. leaders. It just didn't like conservative governments that were trying to do things like fighting for life, fighting for demographic growth in all these countries, disagreed with their foreign policy. All these leaders were also very pro-Israel, pro-Taiwan. In the case of Guatemala, So I think that it was just the Biden administration disagreed with the politics of these countries, even though it went against U.S. interests to disagree with these governments.
Right, and that's where I was going as well. Do you think that any of Hungary's domestic policies in question here, whether it's related to woke ideology or identity politics or migration, have any bearing on America's national security interests in the region?
It was completely the opposite. It played exactly into Vladimir Putin's hands. It made pro-American Hungarians and Guatemalans or Macedonians question the United States and think of alternatives. It was very misguided.
In shifting focus to the United States, do you think that there are similar left-wing, virtually money laundering operations here that are aimed at influencing American politics, particularly through the media?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Soros said very early on, I believe in the mid-'90s, that he wanted to turn his attention inward towards the United States. An American, he's free to do so. As I said in my testimony, I'm also free to criticize him. I disagree with him on the positions he takes. As I said, he's free to do that with his money. I'm free to criticize.
Right, and I think we can also look to taxpayer-funded propaganda outlets like NPR and PBS as well.
I believe that's playing out today in the Senate, yes.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We now move to the distinguished gentleman from Texas. The gentleman, Mr. Gill, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here and taking the time. Mr. Patton, I'd like to start with a few questions. For you, my understanding is that GAO serves as an arbiter of bid protest challenges, but the decisions are non-binding. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
What's the rationale for contractors to use the GAO as a venue for bid protests, given that they're non-binding?
One of the benefits of the GAO bid protest system is that if you file within certain timeframes, you get what's called an automatic stay of performance, meaning that the agency can't move forward with awarding or performing the contract. That allows GAO time to administer and resolve the protest. That's one of the chief benefits of filing at GAO.
Got it. Do you think the GAO would like those to be binding, those decisions?
I think GAO recognizes that there's some true separation of powers issues. Since GAO is a legislative branch agency, we don't want to be perceived as overstepping our lane.
Right. Do you think it would change the landscape if they were?
I think there would be significant questions that would need to be resolved if GAO were given authority or asked to do things that might be perceived to be an executive function.
Got it. And can you provide a couple of examples of some more egregious examples of companies bid protesting?
In what context? We have protests where we have sustained protests. We have protests where we have denied. There have been some instances, as I think alluded to before, we did have a vexatious protester who filed numerous what we might consider meritless protests, and we debarred that individual company from filing protests at GAO.
Do you see that happen often?
Not at all. Actually, that was an anomaly. And since 2018, when we have implemented our electronic protest docketing system with an intended filing fee, we've seen a drop in protests and a drop in repeat filers.
And that's what I was about to ask you. It seems like the current process has the potential to create delays because contractors would file with the GAO first, withdraw their case when they anticipate losing, and then subsequently initiate a new case with the Court of Federal Claims. And you're saying that doesn't happen often, is that correct?
Don't have the data to answer that question, but what I can say is the Court of Federal Claims has around 200 or so cases. So if that is happening, it's happening in a very, very small number of cases.
Got it. Do you think that this process should be reformed in any way?
I think that if there are legitimate questions that people have about its efficacy, those ought to be explored. And to the extent that there are concerns, they should be addressed. But I do think that we do need the data to support whatever concerns might be identified.
Based on your experience, what changes would you like to see?
Right now, we do think that the system is operating as intended. I think that we have not seen any need to initiate any reforms. That doesn't mean that we can't do so if some are in fact identified.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Patton, and I yield the remainder of my time to the chairman.
Thank you very much. The gentleman now has yielded back his time. I would like to amplify, if I can, in the remaining minute and 30 seconds, the admiration that I have for each of you, all three of you, to come and engage this subcommittee. There are always public comments, there are always public perceptions about bids, processes, fairness, the processes involved in that. And I have found that in speaking to each of you three who are deeply involved in this process, that you are providing this subcommittee with your feedback, notwithstanding there are members who have offered some bit of a challenge to that and sustained not only where we are, but what we're attempting to do. I will speak to it on my 5 minutes, but I wanted to use these 42 seconds remaining to let you know that I see little difference between you when you all talk about the system, except to say that you want it to remain fair. You want it to remain something that is a part of a public discussion. You are open not just to feedback, but that you find that the openness by each of the agencies as they go about their business is properly performed by GAO. The GAO has a part in that process, and that outside counsel or these companies have knowledge. And I want to thank you, and I think that Mr. Gill started to get at that by asking the question, well, do you need any changes? And I think that what really happened is Mr. Patton clearly said there are perceptions, there are ideas out there, but in their review, please make sure you address those before you go change anything. And I want to thank the distinguished gentleman from Texas. We now yield back the time and move to the gentlewoman from Washington, D.C. for her 5 minutes. Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hosting this hearing, and it's good to know that we have an administration that is prioritizing making America healthy again and fighting for children who want safe, healthy food and for Americans. And I think that that's refreshing, so we really appreciate this. Dr. Studi, I've got a few questions for you. First of all, what is health equity?
It's the consideration that all individuals have equal access to healthy foods or different aspects of the health system.
I think all individuals should ideally have access to healthy food. Do you think that that should be the central lens through which we look at health?
It is certainly an area of research and discussion.
But the central lens, do you think that makes sense?
You're relating to the work of the 2025 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee that the previous administration did ask them to conduct their review of evidence with a health equity lens.
Well, are you familiar with this article entitled, it was from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. It's called Addressing Misinformation About the Dietary Guidelines for Americans?
Yes.
Okay, and were you an author of this article?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. Your name's on the top. It's the second author. One of the statements in this says, quote, in addition, HHS and USDA have prioritized health equity as the central lens through which all scientific questions will be considered in the 2025 DGAC. Do you think that makes sense?
That was the request from the administration, and that was carried in through the charge to the committee.
But do you think that this is a proper way to go about promoting nutrition?
It is one of the discussion points it's one of the topics that is being discussed.
Well, I'm asking if you think that this is a proper way of going about promoting nutrition in the United States. Your name is on this article.
My perspective on that is I think it's good to look at evidence in all ways, and that can include through that perspective.
Do you think it should be the central lens?
I did not That was the request from our administration.
But you don't think that that's
is the charge.
You don't think that that's proper?
I didn't write the specific charge to the committee. So
Your name is on the article.
it's,
as
yes,
an
and the
author.
article is talking about what the request was to the 2025 committee.
And I'm asking you if you think that that is a proper lens to view nutrition through.
I think it is a lens that you can view nutrition
Right.
through. I don't
But
think
is it
it's
a
the
proper
only one.
lens? Well, this says central lens.
Again, as a career employee in the Department of Agriculture, I implement the requests of our administration, and that was at the time with the Biden administration, the request.
Right, but we have a new administration with different priorities that don't include DEI and health equity. Do you think that this is a proper way to view nutrition?
I think it, as I've mentioned, that it is appropriate to look at literature in every.
So you're not going to answer the question respectfully. We can move on then. I would thought that would be a simple one. You're familiar with the scientific report of the 2025 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, is that correct?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the members who wrote that, who were on the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, right?
Yes.
Got it. One of the things in this same article, which you wrote as a bit of you said misinformation, which you're attempting to dispel, is that there are no conflicts of interest. Is that correct?
The discussion is that conflicts of interest was considered in the process to establish the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. I think conflicts of interest, whether real or perceived, is an extremely important conversation in nutrition science.
Right. One of the members of that committee is a man named Chris Gardner. He's a practicing vegan. He's an environmentalist activist. Receives funding from a company called Beyond Meat, which is trying to run cattle producers out of business, wants to move towards plant-based diets. Do you think that that's a conflict of interest, that he is on this panel advising the United States in an official capacity about what foods are nutritious and what aren't, whenever he has a obvious financial interest in Beyond Meat?
I'm not, I will say that conflicts of interest were reviewed by our
I'm just asking if it is a
Office
conflict of
Ethics
interest.
within the Department of Health and Human Services who chartered the committee. I think that those things should be disclosed and discussed. And the department, the administration was aware of those affiliations.
So that is a conflict of interest. Is that your testimony?
I'm not an attorney in ethics.
Neither am I, but it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Well, if you're talking about a financial conflicts of interest, that is something that our ethics attorneys review and assess. So I do not do that review of our members in that process. We do have individuals who support.
So your testimony is that you don't know if this is a conflict of interest or not?
Well, I will say, I mean, there are processes, and I think part of what the
It's just a yes
conversation
or no
is
question.
with MAHA is should those processes be stronger?
Right. It's just a straightforward yes or no question. Is this a conflict of interest or is it not?
It could be
that somebody
perceived
who
as
is
a conflict of
advising
interest,
us
yes.
on what is
I'll also
nutritious
say-
food has a financial interest in a business that is trying to run cattle producers out of work.
I will say that is reviewed by our
Okay.
legal counsel.
I yield my time back. That's
looking
fine.
at conflict of interest.
One more member, a few UC requests, and then you can, we'll let you go, but we appreciate that. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you again for taking the time, Director Patel, and for Chairman Jordan for holding this hearing. Thank you for depoliticizing the FBI and getting it back to its original mission as well. Director Patel, do you agree that we have a problem in the United States with politically motivated violence?
Absolutely.
And I very much agree. I think we can all agree that political violence is wrong, it's evil, regardless of which side it comes from, and that we can all adamantly and vehemently reject it, or we certainly should. But one of the things that we've noticed recently is that affinity and tolerance for political violence is not equally distributed on both sides of the aisle. In fact, right now, social media is filled with leftists who are cheering on the murder of an iconic conservative political figure, Charlie Kirk. And it's not just random people on Twitter doing this now. There's a YouGov poll released just a few days ago, which stated that 25% of those who identify as very liberal believe that political violence can sometimes be justified. That's far too many, is it not? It is.
One is far too many.
One is far too many. That's right. Only 3% of very conservatives said the same thing, and we can agree that 3% is far too many. But there's an astounding difference between 25% on the left accepting and tolerating political violence and 3% on the right. I would hope that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle would also recognize that there is a systemic problem on their side of the aisle with tolerance for violence against people with whom they politically disagree, that there is a cultural rot on their side of the aisle that needs to be addressed desperately. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
One of the more astounding aspects of this is that it's not just people. This comes from the very top, from their political leaders. Just a few days ago, a member of Congress of this body, Ilhan Omar, shared a video on her social media account about Charlie Kirk's murder, and I'll quote what it said. It said, "Charlie Kirk was Dr. Frankenstein, and his monster shot him through the neck." In other words, Charlie had it coming to him. The words that he said naturally led to his assassination. I mean, that is a reprehensible thing for a member of Congress to say, to suggest, to promote in any capacity. And there are people across this country who are losing their jobs for far less than this. And that, by the way, is a just response to acceptance and tolerance of political violence. It's amazing to me that the political left today, who were the originators and the cheerleaders of cancel culture, now have the backbone to attack conservatives for defending their assassinated friend. But there's a key difference here. Democrats want to silence conservatives for speaking obvious, self-evident ontological truths like that men aren't women and men can't get pregnant. That seems pretty basic. That seems like a basic truth that we should all be able to agree on. Republicans, by contrast, are recognizing that a constitutional republic depends on the free and open exchange of ideas that we can debate without violence, and that assassinating a political rival is evil, it's wrong, and it should not be glorified or promoted or justified in any way, including in the way that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar did. So Mr. Patel, thank you again for being here. I'd like to, with the remainder of my time, just get your opinion. Does the FBI recognize the rising threat of political violence in America, and what can you guys do to address it?
Yes, we do, and what we can do to address it, Congressman, is we need to get online partnerships with these companies in the public space, on these gaming sites, and on these social media sites. As I was saying earlier, there is no way to triage the amount of information generated on these sites by the FBI alone. And we need the public-private partnership. And there's another law that's expiring, I think, at the end of this month, which I believe we need renewed, that allows private sector companies to report into the FBI without liability for criminal investigatory purposes. And that's the kind of stuff we need to keep going.
Got it. Thank you, Director Patel. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Arizona.
I have some UCs.
Gentleman to state his request.
This is Mr. Gill from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. And I'd also like to thank the witnesses for taking the time to be here today. I know y'all are busy, so really appreciate it. Mayor Bowser, thank you to you especially for coming here. You've been mayor for about 10 years, right?
Yes.
Okay. And during that time, would you describe D.C. as a safe city?
Yes.
You would?
Listen, Mr. Gill, and it was brought up earlier by the Congresswoman from
The murder
Detroit.
rate in Washington, D.C. is the 4th highest of any city in the country. Would you describe that as a safe city?
I have heard every statistic and factoid, and they're all different.
about
where
are you
our
disputing
city.
that Washington, D.C. is the 4th highest murder rate in the country?
I'm not familiar with that statistic.
You're not familiar with that
What I know,
statistic.
Mr.
This is your
Gill,
city.
Mr. Gill,
Respectfully,
excuse
this
me.
is your city.
Respectfully, I know that we have driven our murder rate down.
What was the homicide rate in 2014 before you were elected?
I don't know.
Do you know how much the homicide rate has changed during your tenure as mayor?
I do.
How much?
It has gone up.
It's gone up
and
by
it is
about
going
70%.
down.
It's gone up by about 70% from
I don't think that's
2014 to
correct. I don't think that's
2024. Those are
correct.
from the Metropolitan Police Department.
I
That
don't
is
think that
correct.
number is correct.
You should know the crime
Yeah, and
statistics for your own city,
I do know
especially
my
whenever
crime
it's this
statistics.
dangerous. Do you know how carjackings have trended during your time in office?
I know that they have gone down.
They're up over 500% since from 2014 to 2024. That's not a safe city. I don't think any person would call that a safe city. We'll move on. Do you agree that defunding the police makes our communities less safe, don't you?
This is what I want to say.
It's a straightforward question. You're not going to filibuster. Do you think that defunding the police makes our communities less safe?
What I know is that people have moved here. People have sent their kids here. People have started businesses here. We have record.
Does defunding the police make our communities more or less safe?
Those are the indications.
Does defunding the police make our communities more or less safe?
People want to live, work, and visit.
You won't even back your own police department right now. I'm asking you, does defunding the police make our communities more or less safe? And you won't give me a straight answer.
I've already answered that today.
And why don't you tell me again, do you think that defunding the police makes our communities more or less safe?
I've never defunded the police, nor would I.
So you think it makes our communities less safe, is that correct?
I just told you, I've never defunded the police, and
I
never would.
understand that. You know, you may not have defunded the police, and that's a good thing, but you did provide a $125,000 grant to an organization lobbying to defund the police. Are you aware of that?
What is that you just raised?
It's an organization called HIPS that you provided just this year, fiscal year 2025. $125,000 grant to.
I think we funded them to do public health work.
Quote, it's time we shifted to a society free of police and systems of incarceration.
We fund them for public health work.
For public health?
Yes.
Does this make our communities more healthful?
We fund them for public health.
Do you think defunding our police and lobbying to defund our police and undermine local law enforcement makes our communities more safe?
I've answered that
or healthful?
question.
Do you think that providing tax dollars to an organization who wants to defund our police is good for the residents of Washington, D.C.?
We wouldn't fund them for that purpose. We would
fund them. But you funded them, and you chose to give them money. You gave them hard-working tax dollars to an organization that wants to defund the police.
We fund them for public health.
Do you think that giving housing, free housing to illegal aliens is an appropriate use of tax dollars?
We think if it keeps people off the streets, then we have to keep people off the streets.
You agree with giving your residents tax dollars and using them to give subsidized housing for illegal aliens?
But Mr. Gill, we also didn't agree with the governor of Texas or Arizona busing people, tricking them to come to our city.
And
we didn't agree with that either.
It's surprising to me because you're also funding NGOs that support free housing for illegal aliens.
And I hope you would agree that other governors shouldn't send people on buses that don't have any housing to our city.
Free housing for illegal aliens in your city. That makes your city less safe. I want to move on. In May of 2024, and this was referenced earlier, there were some major pro-Palestinian protests and sit-ins at George Washington University. This was during final exam season. They were terrorizing Jewish students. They were doing it for weeks. It was a major problem. The police were called in and you stopped them from doing their job. Why is that?
I didn't stop the police from doing anything.
It is illegal for them to block a roadway. We've got the law right here. It's unlawful for a person alone or in concert with others to obstruct or incommode any street avenue. That's exactly what they were doing, and you refused to allow police to clear them out. Why is that?
That's incorrect.
Why would you stop? Clear the record then.
I never stopped the police.
You didn't stop them?
No, I did not.
You didn't stop them. Would you like to explain what happened? Why police never cleared out this roadway?
Police did clear roadways.
They were there for weeks.
Police cleared roadways.
They were there for weeks.
Actually,
terrorizing Jewish
they
students,
were probably on private property. not on the roadway.
No, they were on public roadways.
No, they weren't.
Terrorizing Jewish students,
they
and you
weren't.
allowed it to happen.
No,
I
they
yield
weren't.
my time back.
No, they weren't.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Gill from Texas.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States, and it should reflect the glory and the beauty and the grandeur of the most powerful civilization that has ever existed on the face of the earth. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, that's not the case under Democrat rule. Under Democrat rule, especially in our nation's capital, we are forced to live under the cloud of anarcho-tyranny where criminals roam free and law-abiding families live in fear. Mr. Speaker, under President Trump's leadership, Republicans are restoring law and order to cities that have been virtually abandoned by the left. That's why I introduced the D.C. Juvenile Sentencing Reform Act to make sure that violent criminals are treated like violent criminals no matter what their age. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, Uber Eats driver Mohammed Anwar was murdered in D.C. during a carjacking by 2 teenage girls. One of the criminals was 15 years old. She was convicted of felony murder, and she was given a maximum sentence under D.C. law, and she'll be free when she turns 21 years old. That's 6 years for murder, for taking a father away from his family. This bill ensures that that travesty of justice never happens again. Mr. Speaker, the reality of crime in D.C. is bleak. D.C.'s homicide rate in 2024 was 27.3 per 100,000. That is the 4th highest in our nation. In the first 6 months of 2025 alone, juveniles in D.C. were arrested 900 times, and many of those arrests were for repeat violent offenders. Around 200 juveniles arrested for violent crimes in 2024 had prior violent crime arrests. Mr. Speaker, this isn't rehabilitation. This is a revolving door of crime that the left has created in this city. Meanwhile, the D.C. City Council passed reforms to weaken policing and reduce penalties for carjacking and robbery. They're choosing, as a matter of policy, criminals over innocent Americans. Mr. Speaker, we hear from the other side of the aisle that locking up criminals by some weird, bizarre logic increases crime. The reality, which we all know because it is self-evident, is that when a criminal is in jail, they are by definition not committing crimes on our streets and not terrorizing innocent Americans. We're told that if we care about public safety, we shouldn't put criminals in prison. Mr. Speaker, this is insane, and they know it, and the American people know it. If we want to live in a law-abiding society, we have to get these violent, ruthless offenders off of our streets. That's what Republicans are doing, and that's what Democrats on the other side of the aisle are fighting right now. Mr. Speaker, this legislation lowers the age for transfer to adult court from 16 to 14 for the most heinous crimes. We're talking about murder, first-degree sexual assault, armed robbery, and burglary. It expands the cases that can be tried by the U.S. Attorney's Office, ensuring that woke, weird prosecutors like D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab can't let violent offenders slip through the cracks. It sends a simple message. Democrats may tolerate crime, but Republicans do not. Mr. Speaker, every American should be able to walk down our streets without fear of being murdered or raped or having their car broken into. Every parent should be able to put their child to bed without wondering if their home is going to be broken into.
I yield another minute to the gentleman from Texas.
This bill restores order and common sense to the laws of our nation's capital. The American people, every visitor in D.C. as well, deserves nothing less. And with that, I yield back the remainder of my time.
Our next item for consideration is H.R. 5140, the District of Columbia Juvenile Sentencing Reform Act. The clerk will please designate the bill.
H.R. 5140, the District of Columbia Juvenile Sentencing Reform Act, a bill to lower the age at which a minor may be tried as an adult for certain criminal offenses in the District of Columbia to 14 years of age.
Without objection, the bill shall be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Without objection to ordered, the chair recognizes himself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will please designate the amendment.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 5140 is offered by Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the substitute will be considered as original text for the purposes of further amendment. I now recognize the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Gill from Texas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your seriousness in bringing law and order back to Washington, D.C. Mr. Chairman, the American people have a right to live in a country where we aren't being butchered and robbed by career criminals that Democrat jurisdictions refuse to get off of our streets. We have a right to be able to take public transportation without being murdered. We have a right to be able to walk down the streets without being robbed or raped. We don't have to live under this left-wing anarcho-tyranny where criminals terrorize innocent people, and that includes juveniles. In 2021, Pakistani immigrant Mohammed Anwar was murdered by 2 juveniles during a carjacking. He was an Uber Eats driver trying to provide a better life for himself here in the U.S. The 2 girls, one of which was 15 at the time of the murder, will both be released onto our streets in a few short years when they turn 21. Mr. Chairman, the purpose of our justice system is not to rehabilitate criminals. It is to give criminals their just desserts, to lock them up and get them off of our streets so that they cannot harm innocent people. Mr. Chairman, the number of juveniles arrested in D.C. has gone up each year since 2020. More than 2,000 juveniles were arrested in 2023 and 2024. In the first 6 months of 2025, there have been 900 arrests of juveniles. Many of these are repeat offenders. In 2024, nearly 200 juveniles arrested for violent crimes had prior violent crime arrests. 52% of all armed robbery arrests in 2024 were juveniles, and 53% of all carjackings in 2025, as of August, were from juveniles in this city. We do not have to live like this. We do not have to allow thugs of any age to terrorize us. Mr. Chair, currently minors 16 years and old and older are eligible to have their case moved up to criminal court and to be tried as an adult in D.C. This bill lowers that age to 14 years old, making 14 and 15-year-olds who commit violent crimes eligible to be charged as adults. Violent crime refers to murder, first-degree sexual assault, burglary in the first degree, and robbery while armed, for instance. These are violent, heinous, horrific offenses that require stronger sentencing to reflect the seriousness of the crimes committed. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and to charge juveniles who commit serious violent crimes as adults. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to strongly oppose this Sentencing Reform Act that's in front of us. Of course, this would lower the age of eligibility for children to be tried as adults in D.C. from 16 to 14 years for, of course, certain criminal offenses. Now, I just want to be clear, a 14-year-old is not an adult. A 14-year-old is barely out of middle school. And there are good public safety reasons to avoid charging juveniles as adults, but especially I want to talk about what's in front of us right now. Now, youth charged adults are more likely to reoffend than youth processed in juvenile courts. That is a fact consistently supported by research when you look at what's happening across the country. Now, the Centers for Disease Control Task Force on Community Preventative Services reviewed decades and decades of research and also concluded that sending youth to the adult system actually increases the rates of violence, doesn't decrease the rates of violence. A report from the National Research Council supported a policy of keeping punishment proportional with age to prevent additional offending, which this bill would make fundamentally impossible across the district. This legislation would also deepen the racial disparities that currently exist in the district's juvenile justice system. And like other bills that are in front of us, we have to come back to the community. Why do we keep trying to take away the ability for DC to govern itself. And let's also look at the folks that make up this community. They should be given the ability to govern themselves. I also want to push back on some of the characterizations that have been made about this bill. Now, we know that compared to states, the district already has the highest youth incarceration rate in the U.S. We know that as a fact. It's more than 3 times higher than the national average. This bill, once again, interferes with DC's self-government and their work in trying to reduce this. This bill would not make DC safer. It would deepen existing racial disparities and push more young people deeper into the adult juvenile system. We, as a group, as a body, should urge all of our colleagues to vote no on this legislation. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strongly oppose this undemocratic and paternalistic bill, which amends D.C. law. The over 700,000 D.C. residents, the majority of whom are black and brown, are capable and worthy of governing themselves. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record letters opposing this bill from D.C. Mayor Marion Bowser, the entire D.C. Council, and D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab.
Without objection, ordered.
While Congress has the authority to legislate on local matters, it does not have the duty to do so. In Federalist 43, James Madison said of D.C. residents, and I quote, "A municipal legislature for local purposes derived from their own suffrages will of course be allowed them," close quote. Since 1802, Congress has created different local governments for D.C. In 1953, the Supreme Court held that, quote, "There is no constitutional barrier to delegation by Congress to the District of Columbia for full legislative power," close quote. The substance of this bill is irrelevant since there is never justification for Congress to legislate on D.C. local matters, but I will briefly discuss it. I strongly oppose charging 14-year-olds as adults. However, whether to reduce or increase the minimum wage to be charged as an adult should be a decision for D.C. alone. I respect D.C.'s home rule. In a series of cases since 2005, the Supreme Court has recognized that children are, quote, "constitutionally different from adults for the purpose of sentencing," end quote. In these cases, the court noted that childhood is marked by, quote, "rashness, proclivity for risk, and inability to assess consequences," close quote. The court said in its decisions, quote, rested not only on common sense, but on what any parent knows, but on science and social science as well, close quote. This bill is both cruel and counterproductive. Most incarcerated people eventually come home. The evidence shows that Congress charged as adults, that children charged as adults are more likely to reoffend and be violent than children charged as juveniles. I urge members to vote no on this bill, and I yield back.
Jill yields back. Before I recognize Ms. Simon, I ask unanimous consent to enter the following press release from the United States Attorney's Office, District of Columbia, into the record. On June 30th, 21-year-old Eric Tarpinian, an intern with the House of Representatives, was murdered in D.C. We now know from U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro that the two 17-year-old suspects recently arrested had a documented history of family court violence. Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to extend my remarks today in memory of James R. Bell, who's the founder of the Hayward Burns Institute and one of the nation's premier minds who sought justice for young people who were and have been and will continue to be systematized in the adult courts. Mr. Chair, I strongly oppose H.R. 5140, the Juvenile Justice Sentencing Act, for many reasons. We're talking about 14-year-olds. In fact, my 14-year-old is in the chamber right now. She forgot her keys. She's a ninth grader. She's a child. She's a child. H.R. 5140 would allow children as young as my youngest daughter. My youngest daughter would deny them the protections of the juvenile court and place them in the adult criminal justice system. To pass this bill would be to unravel one of the most important reforms in American history. In 1899, this nation created the first juvenile court in Cook County, Illinois. We did so because Americans recognized what science and common sense has made plain, that children are not adults. The principle became law because we knew that across the country, we knew that transforming young people out of literally horrific behavior requires rehabilitation. The founders of the juvenile justice system believe that rehabilitation is not a weakness, but the strongest form of accountability. The data has borne that out. The Centers for Disease Control found that young people transferred into adult courts are 34% more likely to prevent violent crimes upon release than their counterparts who move through the juvenile court system. The Department of Justice has confirmed repeatedly that the transfer laws do not reduce crime. They, in fact, increase it. The claim that prosecuting children as adults and putting them in adult prisons, cages, defers and deters violence is not supported by a single credible study. True accountability means facing the harm that has been caused, making amends, and working through treatment as children, through education, through hardcore accountability, and behavior change. States like Missouri and Connecticut have pioneered therapeutic models where even young people committed of the most serious and violent crimes receive intensive supervision, counseling, and restorative justice processes that include and center the victims. The result has resulted in lower recidivism rates, greater public safety, and more lives redeemed. That is accountability that works. This bill does not advance safety. It is bringing about more regression in a system that has continuously failed. Around the world, democracies like Germany, democracies like Sweden and Japan invest heavily in rehabilitation. Their children come home safer and their communities are stronger because of it, because of that commitment to rehabilitation. These countries that lock 14-year-old children up in adult prisons, they're not models of justice, not models of safety. These countries that put children into cages, they are warnings. And I know what real safety looks like. Over the last 3 decades, I helped design and implement initiatives that have cut youth recidivism by over 70%. Most recently, I led a comprehensive plan that reduced crime in our local transit system that has decreased crime by 40%. These results don't come from abandoning children to adult jails. They come from believing that young people, even the ones who commit the most heinous and serious crimes, can be held accountable and that these young people can change and make amends. The choice is up to us, and the choice is stark. Either we honor the founding promise of the juvenile justice system, or we join the ranks of nations around the world that treat children as disposable. Either we follow evidence and history towards safer communities, or we legislate out of fear and condemn children to cycles of crime. This bill is not justice. In fact, it is a retreat from it. I urge my colleagues to reject H.R. 5140. And I'll yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any other members seek recognition? Seeing none, the question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 5140. Oh. The question is now on the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is now on favorably reporting H.R. 5140 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The bill is ordered favorably reported.
Recorder vote, Mr. Chairman.
Well, one thing that I'll say is I agree with Letitia James whenever she stated that no one is above the law. And what happened here is a grand jury determined that there is sufficient evidence to bring to indictment allegations of mortgage fraud against her. She's going to have her day in court. It's going to be about 2 weeks from today, and we'll see what the court decides. But it looks like there is sufficient evidence here to reasonably say that she did indeed commit mortgage fraud, and if she did, she needs to be held to the same standards as anybody else would. I mean, this is somebody who tweeted whenever she was going after President Trump, weaponizing the New York Justice Department against the president, that when powerful people cheat to get better loans, it comes at the expense of hardworking people. She needs to be held to that standard as well. No, listen, what she did against President Trump is entirely different. This is somebody who ran on going after President Trump with every single thing she possibly could, saying that she was going to get his name in the news. She was going to go after him. She was going to do her best to influence the results of the 2024 election by weaponizing the Justice Department. What we're finding out is now she is guilty of similar charges that she was trying to politicize against President Trump, and I think she needs to be held to the same standard.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was great to hear from the new leader of the Democrat Party, Mrs. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Unfortunately, we didn't also get to hear from their other leader, Mr. Zoran Mamdani. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to be proud this evening to vote to reopen the federal government.
House should be in order.
Mr. Speaker, for 40 days, the Democrats shut our government down to pursue unrealistic policy proposals that they know the American people do not want. Mr. Speaker, the American people do not want health care for illegal aliens. They do not want our tax dollars funding left-wing media outlets, and they do not want to drive up our debt $1.5 trillion as part of a short-term continuing resolution. Mr. Speaker, the last 40 days have been nothing but pure political nihilism, and I'm glad that this nightmare is over so that we can get back to work on behalf of the American people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.